title, right?
Yeah, it'll be fine. Countdown.
What?
This is Rowena
countdown.
Dooley asking Soul
No, MC, look at
Citizens
the
to
title
report
on
for
the
duty.
picture.
Oh.
Just kill the stream. Just go and kill the stream.
I've been staring at the moon. Take me higher, waiting for your call.
This is Rowena Dooley asking Soul Citizens to report for duty.
Welcome to another episode of Soul Citizen. This is episode 188 called Mythbusters. Today is January 28th, 2024, at least in North and South America. Welcome everyone. Happy to see everyone in chat. And before we get started, I want to introduce our co-host. To my immediate left, we have CaptainSeriousFun. I got it right the first time. That'll be the only time I get it right. How are you doing, CaptainSeriousFun?
Greetings and salutations. How is everybody doing tonight? No matter what you do, you get it right. So don't worry about it. It's all good. It's good to be here, though. Happy to be here with the chat and with you two gentlemen.
And I love his voice. He always got that video voice going. And to his left, and thank you for the subscription, Flagazog, and I missed one before. Thank you for the subscription from CaptainSeriousFun. Appreciate that. And to his immediate left, we have GriffinGamingRPG. The prodigal son returns. Is that what you come to say?
Well, just for this week, yeah. How are you? Good
week.
to be back. Good to be back. Good to sit in. Good to see you guys. Hope everybody's doing well.
And for people who may miss you, what have you been up to?
Resting, taking it easy, relaxing, family, things like that. Just taking it easy over the holidays. That's about it.
Yeah, I noticed that since you've been gone, I've been getting fewer joke bans, so I'm gonna miss that once you return. But as you know, or may not know, today's title is called Mythbusters, where we will be talking about basically the the different hold on, let me get this thing again. Nope. The different things that may have occurred over the years, covering misinformation about Star Citizen, Squadron 42, development in games, and some things you may have forgotten, and some things you may have wished you forgotten. So that's the thing for today. But yeah,
misinformation about Star Citizen. I can't believe there is such a thing.
I know, right? Saying ain't so.
I can't believe that the show's only going to be tonight, because we could probably go all weekend. So
we can go all night. We can go. I mean, when the show ends, we'll be talking about it after dark too. So I'll just saying, join Discord to talk about it. What it when the show ends. But yeah, so let's get started. Mythbusters. So first up, we'll cover. Oops, gotta scroll up to get to the beginning. Digital Anvil. So yes. Here we go. Now this is how it all well, I don't want to say all started, but we don't want to go too far back, like to the days of origin in 1990s. But we figure we started out in 2000 with Digital Anvil. Griffin, you want to?
And I think that. Oh, I was going to say, fastcart. I think that makes some sense because to go back to origin means you're still in that time where Chris had that deep and abiding affiliation with a publisher, right? And so to call this one out, and Griff, I know you could extend on this idea, but it looks like to me to call this one out is drawing a line where he sort of said, "That's it for me and a publisher." Right, and I'm going to start thinking about how I do this in my own direction if I do it at all.
Yeah, there's been like a lot of there's a lot that started even this far back in relation to Chris Roberts, his management style, the company, the way he would run it. One of the highlights that we talked about, and for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, because we do, I guess we should cover a little bit of this, was that Chris's notoriety came from several games, but most notably the Wing Commander series of games. But there were other games that he had made. And as that progressed from going from the Wing Commander series to Freelancer, Starlancer, the other games that he would develop, he began to have a reputation for going over schedule, budgets and things like that. And this is under the publishers that he was under. And one of the most notable, though, was toward the end, where he was working with Microsoft, and they really wanted him to get, I think it was Freelancer. Is that correct, Captain? I think it was Freelancer that they really wanted to get out. They wanted it to get pushed out. He ended up leaving the company. I think Aaron, if I'm not mistaken, was the one that completed the project. But after that, Chris basically felt that if he wanted to make the game that he wanted to make, that the constraints of being under a publisher was going to be something that he just didn't want to do. Now, this was way, way, way back when, that he did a lot more before he finally got to evolve to that place. But evidently, this was something that he felt restricted him. Now, I do find it interesting that I've seen over the years many commentators, and particularly people in the industry, who have said that one of the failures for CIG is that they need a publisher, because for them to have a publisher, they would be held to deadlines and producing things. And so there have been several people in the industry and magazines who have said that's one of the biggest problems, is the fact that he doesn't have a publisher. So anyway,
it's so funny because Freelancer was, if for folks that were around, they may recall that Freelancer was the entree, and Starlancer was the appetizer the year before, right? And Starlancer dropped. It was commercially unsuccessful, which is what put the pressure on Freelancer's pace and the things that they needed to get out of the Freelancer project. In fact, Starlancer was tied in 2000 for runner-up for the best game no one played at IGN's Best of 2000 Awards, right? No one knew about it. No one played it. Even though it had a lot of Wing Commander principles, it was set in a slightly different universe. And so that is what created the pressure. And as a result, some of the narratives around Chris Roberts was, but remember, Chris had a publisher, right? And it's the publisher's job to take the content and advertise it and market it and get it out into stores and all that. And Starlancer underperformed. Whose fault was that? Right? So he had a publisher that didn't do what they're supposed to do, and now with the follow-up game that is really the vision, right? They're going, well, we need you to move in this with this pace and with this alacrity and do these things, and we got a problem with your style. Well, no, you had a problem with your failure on Starlancer, right? But they didn't own that, so.
That's a great point. And a lot of people don't know. I mean, we always hear people talk about Wing Commander. Wing Commander was the franchise that really blew up, and we could see hints of what would become Star Citizen. But from my understanding, even though I never really played the game, but I've watched other people play it, it seemed like Freelancer was really the baby that introduced other dynamics, where Wing Commander was kind of like the combat side. Freelancer started introducing that whole idea of being your own freelancer, hence the name of the ship, right? It had a much more open world feel to it. And that was where Chris wanted to start going. So many people
Yeah,
say
that's
this
absolutely
is the
correct.
successor.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. From the Wing Commander series, I mean, we don't talk about Wing Commander Armada, but the games all the way through to Starlancer, success and failure was about your abilities as a pilot.
Right.
Freelancer was like, well, that piloting is another thing that you can do, but really it's your ability to thrive in the world.
Yeah.
Right. So and it was a much more complex game. So
yeah. Well, digital. Go ahead, Professor. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to read the part.
So we just I posted a couple of links about Microsoft landing with Anvil. That'll give you some history. People might want to read up on that, so you can just go ahead and look at those links. Go ahead.
Now, there's a reason why we're telling you guys this too, because one of the myths or the ideas, or some reason, is that people thought that Chris Roberts, I don't know if they thought he was broke or wasn't making money or what. But evidently he was making enough money that he would move from the gaming industry into the motion picture industry. And you can't do that without having some type of funding or investors or money. So Microsoft actually paid him, I think it was anywhere from $5 to $7 million for the 10 titles. Thank you for the follow. Edward. Thank you for that follow. They paid them $5 to $7 million for their titles that they held. There were 10 titles that were on the board that Microsoft bought. So let's just even say, if we went on the low end of it, we could say they made anywhere from $35 to $50 million in that transition from Digital Anvil to Microsoft. So we want to kind of say that because, again, later on, we started sensing this thing of people saying, well, why is Chris Roberts able to do this or do that? Well, because he had money. He had his own money, let alone when we start talking about investor money. And that moves us on to Ascendant Pictures, which is, we move from the gaming industry. Chris evidently, maybe we talk about this too, Fastcart. Chris was heavily influenced by movies like Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a real big thing for him. And even though he loved games, there was also this side of him that loved movies too, you know. And Ascendant Pictures became the company that he would ultimately go out and create. I don't know if you guys want to cover that. Mm-hmm.
And he had I can't name all the movies that he done, but I mean, one of the more popular ones, one of the more profitable ones is Lord of War, right? That's the one with Nicolas Cage, and that made money. So people, you talk about this thing about Chris Roberts being broke. No, he had money from the game, from the bio from Microsoft, obviously, and from making movies or being a producer. So if you watch Lord of War, you'll see Chris Roberts' name in the credits. So he had money before Star Citizen even started, way before Star Citizen even started.
Yeah, but I don't know, Fastcart, I don't know where people or why people just assumed that he didn't start making money until he started working on Star Citizen. You named just a couple of the movies there, but some of the, now mind you, like all motion picture companies, guys, you have your hits and you have your flops. Okay, so we're not saying that every film that Ascendant Pictures produced was a hit, but here are some of them. Who's Your Caddy was one. Lucky Number 11 was another one. All the King's Men was another one. Let's see, you mentioned Lord of War, which was another one, and The Punisher. Those are all films that had been produced during that period of time. And evidently, Chris had said that basically at a certain point, he wanted to come back to doing games, but he wanted to be able to come back and make the game that he wanted to make. And during this time, by him entering into this industry, it allowed him to build relationships outside of the gaming industry, but now he was making relationships with people in film and motion picture.
And coming to understand the emergent alignment of special effects assets, right? So, when he did this in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was the same time that Lucasfilm and other shops were developing these CGI assets that were in the prequel Star Wars films and other places, that were taking some of the same skills he was seeing developing games on the gaming side and seeing them inform the film side. Well, that gave him some expertise in those conversations, right?
And
even as a producer,
even before this period, he was making inroads with the entertainment industry because in Wing Commander, Mark Hamill, John Rhys Davis, they were in Wing Commander, so he made some inroads there. Then brought it full circle when he got into Ascendant Pictures, and then he's continuing that circle again with Star Citizen, with Squadron 42. So yeah,
that's a good
one
point.
One of the mythologies around this time with the movie industry and Chris Roberts was this idea that he, and thank you DK Wildcat for the subscription, that he and Ortwin and others, that they sort of had a funny funding model even back then. The truth of it is that Ortwin was familiar with international and European film finance, and there was a German loophole that made it more lucrative for investors to invest in film. Now, for those of you who know the film industry, you know that producers and studios are always looking for places where they can be subsidized to do their film. Anywhere in the world, if they get, Game of Thrones was incentivized to go to Croatia. What do you mean? What do you think incentivized means? It means that they got a tax break or some sort of dollar incentive or some sort of lower rate on the union rate or something that made that place more competitive to make films in other places. And these things change all the time. It just happened to be that at that time, the incentive was in Germany was to do movies in Germany meant that investors would be able to pool their money in such a way that it wasn't all exposed in the endeavor to taxation. Right. And, just like me, I'm always looking, not always, but regularly take a look at my investment portfolio and go, where can I gain advantage? It's the same thing. So when we look at some of these things that become mythologies, it's because a fact has happened, and then people place that fact through their lens of bias, right? Like, so if you already have a particular bias, you see that fact in a certain way, and if you don't have that or you have a different bias, you see the fact a different way. So
very true.
So yes, that is Ascendant Pictures and different ways that Chris Roberts made money before Star Citizen. And moving on from that, breaking news. So this is the introduction or the announcement for Star Citizen. So that's go ahead.
That was an interesting piece. It wasn't an announcement for Star Citizen. This came off of a website that CaptainSeriousFun is very familiar with. I stumbled across it. I remember. I'm not going to say that. I was familiar with this forum, but I never really was into it back in the day. But he's very familiar with it. He said he spent years on this thing. And what this breaking news article was basically the rumors, because the Wing Commander fans were still keeping track with Chris Roberts. And what they saw was this new website come up called Roberts Space Industries. And what they were hoping for was some type of, what we said earlier, some type of spiritual successor to Freelancer and Starlancer. They had no idea there was going to be this whole new thing of Star Citizen. They just knew that something was rumbling. And I think the date on this is September of 2012. So we're talking about a month before the announcement at GDC. So there were rumblings. Yeah, there were rumblings of people paying attention to that something's going on, and maybe Chris Roberts is going to make a new Wing Commander.
Chris was smart. Chris was smart about it. At this website, Wing Commander CIC and the Starport, which was more freelancer based, these forums, I was on these forums. I was saying to Griff earlier, I haven't been on these forums in probably around this time. So probably around a decade, maybe 8 years was the last time I was on there. But, for the old heads among us, Chris was cultivating the tribe that was going to be responsive to the idea. Even then, he went on something called Internet Relay Chat, or IRC, right? And on Wing Commander CIC, the IRC was called Wingnut, and he went on there, so he had been tracking people's interest, saw that there continued to be a core community that was invested in the type of storytelling he had done at Wing Commander, and he went on there to tell them, I've got something coming up soon. I'm going to announce something soon. In 3 weeks, I'll give you an early heads up. Already thinking about how to tribe people for that early access, right? Before even the GDC announcement, right? And so, these were the spaces and places. And what was funny was that once he said that, the forum was like, they were doing their own countdown, right? In the discussion, like, oh, it's 2 weeks, it's 1 week. Oh, it got pushed back some hours. What's going to be said? Oh my God, he's doing this space thing, right? People were saying, I hope it's not just going to be on Xbox, right?
Right.
And so for him to go on and say, nah, this is a PC game for the PC gamer, was really compelling to this community. He had a core tribe from day one that he had cultivated in the run up to GDC.
Yeah. I want to kind of highlight. Go ahead, Fastcart. Go ahead.
I just wanted to, CaptainSeriousFun almost beat me to the quote, but it said right here, Chris Roberts, the quote, it says, I've got something to announce, I'm going to announce soon, and in about 3 weeks, this is from September 9th, 2012, I'll give you guys an early heads up. So that is the hint that he gave them. So go ahead, Griff.
No, I was going to say, you posted an image that was also put out. It's one of the earliest images we had of concept art for Star Citizen. And I actually remember, Fastcard, you might remember, I don't know if, Captain, if you remember seeing the video of this where they actually did create this, where they walk inside this building, they go across this ramp. But for those of you who are looking at that link that Fastcart dropped in, you'll see there's a JPEG there that says Cloud Imperium at the bottom. And you can see where the reference to this, now I don't know if this is supposed to be ArcCorp or Tier, looks more like an ArcCorp kind of thing. Yeah. But they notice there's a thing there that says the Mercenaries Guild. You can see the Hornets are outside. Some of the concept ideas were already being formed back in 2012. And those of us who play Star Citizen now can look at this and recognize and see where what we have now, where it came from. So this stuff was stuff that was thought out way ahead of time. And a lot of times people have talked about, and I don't want to get into a big thing about feature creep and all this other stuff, but sometimes there's this feeling that there was all this feature creep going on, like as if, Chris would see something and all of a sudden say, we got to throw that in the game. But no, there was a lot of stuff that if you go back far enough, you'll see there's so many things that they've talked about that he was talking about back in 2012 and 2013. But because a lot of us came in later, we came in 2014, 15, 16, 17, we didn't hear those early 10 for the chairman and all these other times where he said and talked about a tremendous amount of detail that they wanted to be able to put into this game. And the more you learn about that detail, the more you start to find out that they didn't just make this stuff up, or somebody just didn't get inspired because they saw something or because some other game produced something. Chris was already a visionary and seeing a lot of these items way ahead of time. And they may have only talked about them once or twice. They didn't talk about them every week. We didn't have an ISC back then where there was this constant reminding. But many of the things that people have determined are feature creep or too much, they were there from the very beginning.
Yeah, Dog pointed out Hangar 42. That's in the center of the picture, and then you got the big 42 by the ship. It almost looked like a precursor to the Freelancer the Miss Freelancer. It almost looked like that. So yeah, some of the ideas they were thinking about, way early, like Griffin said.
Okay.
All right. So moving on from that, we're going on to it's a scam. Vengeful, thank you for the subscription for 38 months. Dang, appreciate it. Thank you for that.
Thank
you. So yeah, it's a scam. This is the filing history for Cloud Imperium Games. I'll put the link in a bit, but basically it gives you a rundown of the history of Cloud Imperium Games corporate-wise. So it has a couple of pages. The first page goes down to 2019, but the latest one, September 2023. So yeah, this is how you can figure out what their
do me a favor, click on that because it takes it all the way back. It goes back several years. Click on that bottom link because I think it goes back to 2013 or 14. I think.
It goes all the way back to 2013. Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea that people didn't think that, obviously when people say scam, that could mean a lot of different things, right? But the fact that there has been actual record that's been held, particularly in the UK, and when we get to the financial transparency part, I'll talk about a little bit more in detail, Fastcart. But the fact that there were people who thought that this was a scam, I've always found it interesting because, let me ask you guys, why do you guys think people thought it was a scam? I mean, there was some excitement in the beginning from people, particularly from the old Wing Commander community. But why do you think so many gamers, when they heard about this idea of this ambitious game, the default feeling was it a scam? Was it because of the way they was raising money, the crowdfunding? What do you guys think?
Me personally, I think it was because the funding model. It was brand new back in the day. Star Citizen was the first one to really do this. Since then, other people have done it, and it's more legitimized now. But Star Citizen was the first, and people had trouble adjusting to it because they're used to like buying a game from the store or online and get it. The idea of crowdfunding it was still new back then too. So it's a whole lot of things.
Yeah, nobody wants to be made a fool of, right? Nobody wants to be. It's hard to be vulnerable, right? And when you are, my dog's trying to get in the door. Sorry. When you are, when you're experiencing something that's brand new and outside the norm, right? And somebody's telling you, "Oh, it's going to work this way," it's easier in terms of the psychology and emotion of it to just be like doubtful, because then you don't have raised expectations that get dashed, right?
Yeah.
Now that is different than some of the like really hostile and rageful assertions that people have made on the basis of some of these mythologies. But just overall, it's easier to just be doubtful, and then if it happens, it's a nice surprise versus being embracing, and going along on the journey exposed for your celebration of the idea, right? And then Rastasan says in the chat, and this is correct, Kickstarter was a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
Right? And so you combine that with an unfamiliar model. It would be like if Tesla launched and was talking about the supercharger network, but there had been 5 or 6 other electric cars that just stole people's money, right?
Yeah.
Tesla would have had a hard time convincing an everyday person to lean in, right? Again, now that's different than going, electric cars are crap and I hate everything about them. There's some people who are really rageful about the mythologies. But the overall sentiment of doubt, I sort of get it in terms of the environment that Star Citizen was in at the time.
Let me ask you guys this. Do you think that also, I was just thinking about what was going on at that time. Kickstarter definitely, Cap was a factor. There was also something else that was starting to happen in gaming back in those days. And that was, remember when the whole thing came up with EA and loot boxes? Remember that?
God.
This idea of being able to pay to win became another factor. So, you may have had a ship that was a small ship like an Aurora for $30 or $40. But then if you bought this bigger ship, right, this Andromeda for $200, I think that there was a conscious, subconscious thing that says, here's my pay to win, right? It's not that I'm, the idea of supporting the project is one thing, but as gamers, we're really looking at how do I get to the end game as fast as possible? So if I want to get that multi-cruise ship over that single flying ship, I got to pay more money. You know what I mean? And I'm sure for some people, that was the way they viewed it. And they figured, oh, well, there's people. And because remember, there was a big stink about they're selling ships for $3,000, which they weren't back then. There weren't no $3,000 ships. But they were saying, they're selling ships for hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. And this is a virtual item, which is the same thing as what a loot box was in, let's say, Star Wars Battlefront, right? You keep throwing your money at it and and you're going to get better. So I'm wondering whether some of that was going on in gaming culture got also translated into Star Citizen. The more you pay, the better your chances of winning, was a factor for people, which also loot boxes were started to be called scam. And so now we kind of translate that to Star Citizen. Here's another scam. And
as a matter of fact, I think some European countries put a ban or some kind of legislature or laws against loot boxes. So that had an effect. And back at the very beginning of the show, I said there were things that we have forgotten and things we wanted to forget. Loot boxes is one of the things we probably wanted to forget. So land claim is another example. Star Citizen was I don't want to say the first, but they were they gained notoriety for land claims, even though you had other industries doing digital land claims too. But Star Citizen, you can buy land for $50 in Star Citizen, and that was new back then. Though. It was unfamiliar, so yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a certain. I was going to say there is a certain energy around. Things have been done a certain way, and now you are there when things are going to be done a different way, right? And people are wondering, like, is this going to work? Am I at the start of something that's going to matter and be different? I don't know if y'all remember. Fastcart has raised this theme of you may not want to remember because maybe you were an investor, but do y'all remember the Ouya?
Ooh.
Right?
Oh.
The Ouya, the OUYA.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Oh my God, I did forget about that.
$8 or $9 million Kickstarter, right? Brand new console, Android based.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Right? It was gone. It started in 2013. It was gone in 2015. Right? But just another example of people going, oh, maybe there's a different way to do consoles. Oh, nope. No, there isn't, right?
I don't want to fire up Colossal in chat, but EverQuest Next. Next.
Right.
Another one, folks tossed in money toward. And, EverQuest, I mean, big franchise, right? Who's thinking that they're not going to deliver? Right. And, man, people got burnt on that,
I just want to give a shout out to Wastastan. Wastastan, on my point, said loot boxes are too much like gambling, so that's why some of the other countries put laws on it. But
yes, they are.
And Cap, can you help me out? Like in America, we had the FCC. In Europe, they have the what?
So we have the SEC, right? The Securities and Exchange Commission that manages the finances piece. In the UK, they have Companies House, and what you see here with these filings. These UK filings with Cloud Imperium UK is them filing to Companies House. Now, what's interesting, and I put this in my video, quick shout out to me and my video on YouTube.
Yes, definitely.
Moonshot.
Yes.
Oh, Moonshot.
You all check it out.
And there's a moment where I put up the actual document, the California document that shows that Cloud Imperium was started like 10 April of 2012 in the United States, right? So they started a company in the United States, then they started one in the UK. What's interesting about the UK one versus the United States one is there's a lot more transparency of finances and who's involved required for Companies House than there is in the SEC. Now, if you end up in litigation in the United States, the SEC is a lot, that stuff ends up being a lot more, you can see a lot more of it across the case as a result of discovery in the United States than you can see in the legal process in the UK. But just before that, just every day, like you could go now and look at these filings in the UK and see the company's finances in detail. For me, this is sort of, when people say it's a scam, scams happen like some scams happen out in front of you like the day before, but some scams happen in the dark, right? It's hard for it to be a scam when there's this financial reporting that's happening with rigor in multiple, to Fastcart's point, the SEC, Companies House, what's happening in the European Union proper. Every jurisdiction isn't as lax as every other. Some of them are kind of serious about these financials.
That's right.
For me, that gave me some good feeling that some assurance.
Confidence.
Thank you, Griff. Yeah, confidence. Thank you, Fastcart. That this was at least attempting to be an ongoing concern, right? Versus nobody's going to be able to put their hands on anybody. These guys are just going to disappear onto a yacht into the night or whatever.
Right. Pardon the expression. And to your point, one of the things I often heard people say is that they need to be held accountable. Right. And I'm not trying to be funny. I do understand the community's dynamic of saying that because the community are the ones that are supporting the project. But we need to let the community know that there are higher levels than us that also hold them accountable. UK Gov UK, they hold them accountable. And so if you want to find this information, Fastcart's already dropped the link in. The information is public. It's available for you to see who owns the company, who are the directors in the company. The financials are produced. And we're going to talk about the financials a little bit later. But just to let people know, if they have questions, there is a level of transparency that's out there to help give you, to your point, Captain, a bit more assurance and confidence that things are being taken, being from a business standpoint, that there are eyes watching what CIG is doing.
And you both make my job so easy because you both made the point that I wanted to make much more eloquently than I was going to make them. So, yes, all I had to do was say FCC, and Cap knew exactly where I was going, so that was good. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. But, yes, I made this point last week, like, to Griffin's point, there are higher levels than us to try to keeping them accountable. But if you still think Star Citizen is a scam or Squadron 42 is a scam, you can consult a lawyer and have at it and see where that gets you. But, CIG or Cloud Imperium is making sure that they have all their ducks in a row, per se.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so up next we have... Oh, yes. This is the great micromanager. This is part of the scam.
Yeah, that'll be the next one. Now that'll be for Where's My Money. So we can talk about. Well, since you're here, we'll do that, and then we'll do the micromanager. Is that okay?
Okay. So Where's My Money? So yeah, guess what? He bought a yacht. This is part of the myth that somehow, some way, Chris Roberts and Sandy Roberts, Sandy Garden back then, were poor. They didn't have any money before Star Citizen, but then they kind of jumped to the money, and they're like Scrooge McDuck swimming in a vault full of money. So yes, this is from one of the forums, MMORPG. So I don't think anyone that's crowdfunded this game would be very happy about that either if I were snapping pictures on the back of the yacht somewhere. And this is like a quote that Chris Roberts made about spending the back of money, but someone took that and put it on top of this. That's the history of this thing.
Yeah, as if Chris Roberts was like, in a ditch somewhere, right? Covering Sandy with a bag or something, and he was in a ditch with no money in a bag, and he just was like, I got an idea, right? Right? No, the man was walking around, right, with his own funding, right? Like Sandy came on Info Runners with Execute and that squad over there, Algorithm, and she talked about how she just wanted him to be happy, right, and doing something that he felt empowered by doing. But that wasn't that they didn't have the money to do things. Now they ain't buying yachts, right? You can rent a yacht, but this is him mocking that sentiment, right? Like this is him telling me that he's aware that this is the sentiment out there that he's out here buying yachts up with the money, as if a yacht is this incredible investment either. Ain't nobody buying up no yachts, but anyway. And yacht rental anyway isn't that big a deal. I live in Maryland, right? You can go down to Baltimore and get a yacht for a couple $100 or an hour. You can rent it for $1,000 for a day or whatever. And
that's a good point, because this may not even be his boat. This could be something he's rented. It could be a friend's boat that didn't have to pay a thing for. So we don't know, but people are making assumptions.
Yeah, people ran away with this image when it came out. I remember when this happened. And again, that's why we kind of started out the program talking about that Chris and Sandy Roberts have had their own money for quite a while. It was to such a degree with this image. I remember reading a couple people who actually went out and tried to measure the width of the boat to determine the size of it. If it's, and I hate to say this, most of the people who measured it said it's not a yacht, whatever it's on, it's a charter or something else, but they would not consider the size of this, what they see in this image, to be a yacht.
Yeah, it looked like a Chris Craft.
Chris Craft. Yeah, and if you see the back of the boat, this image doesn't show it, but there are other images out there that show that there's a flag that's on the back of the boat. It's not in the UK. I don't know if it's in Italy or someplace else. Maybe they were vacationing or whatever. The guy would assume they're vacationing because he's sitting out there relaxing with shorts and sunglasses on. But it's interesting to think that there's this idea of that any money that comes in, I don't know if they think Chris should be living in a 1-bedroom apartment somewhere and that's all that he should be doing. But to think that they don't have the financial ability within themselves to be able to enjoy life and produce a good game at the same time, I think is bad. And I understand there's an idea of people being concerned about where their money is going. We don't want to take anything away from that. But I think that the fact that we're showing that there are financials, that there are documents, that the government, things have to be submitted to the government. And we do know fastcart, not to be funny, but you mentioned this earlier, there have been people who've tried to sue CIG for feeling that there was money being not spent or managed well. But there haven't been any cases, even the big case we had with CryEngine. For the most part, CIG has always been on top when it came down to those type of litigations.
Or if they have been on top, they changed their TOS or EULA to better reflect their intentions to the consumer. So yeah,
I'm not sure that they changed it for that. I think they changed their EULA, and I could be wrong, Fastcart. You may be absolutely right. I think that the EULA changed based upon where the project was. And I think that to go back and reevaluate where we are in the game. For example, in the earlier days, getting a refund was not a big thing. In the earlier days, if people wanted a refund, they could get their money back. But as this project has evolved and as money has been spent over the years, they basically had to come to a point where they brought that standard up to having a very broad refund process, to saying if you need your money back, you get 30 days. That's it.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's fiscally responsible, right?
Exactly.
You're starting to hire people, right? Yeah. And you got to pay people, and whatever you hire people for, it's 30% more for their benefits, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, this is about being responsible to the money. It would require a change in the refund policy. You can't have volatility on the basis of somebody's Reddit post, right? And whims of people just trying to take the company up and down with addition and subtraction of resources. That would just be crazy. So
now, I will say this too. CIG has been very fair quite often in the refunding policy, even with the 30-day clause. I'll give you an example of what I mean. You can't play Star Citizen for 5 years or 6 years and then come back and say, I don't want to fund this anymore. Because that's a tremendous amount of time that's gone by, regardless to the amount of hours that you've been playing the game. Now, I know there's some people who may feel that they should be able to do that. But the reality is your money from 5 years ago is spent. It's gone. It's paid for employees and a whole bunch of other things. It's not like that money is sitting around in the bank. And quite often people think, well, here's $600 million. That's money that's laying around in the bank. If you go back and look at those financials, you will quite often see that there was less than $1 million available in income assets at the end of the fiscal year, because that money gets spent on those 5 studios and all those employees. So I think that the idea of, this is what I was going to say about fairness. There have also been people who have gone to CIG because they've had some type of financial hardship. That hardship could be in relation to health or loss of a job. And they've written into CIG, and CIG has refunded them money. So this idea as if, you know, your money is just gone, that was being pushed by a certain channel on Reddit, that there was this issue about refunds, is not always the case, unfortunately. But we also have to be practical, to your point, Captain, that they are running a business, and you can't. And we do the same thing with regular video games, right? People playing, oh, I played Starfield for 15 hours and I asked for a refund. Well, you played for 15 hours. You can come ask for a refund now. And unfortunately, people try to do the same thing with Star Citizen.
I worked at Sears in the paint department when I was 16, and we had people who would show up with cans of paint from the 70s, right? They ain't even filled with paint; they're filled with water, and say, "I never used this. I want a refund."
Oh,
right. And Sears, to its credit, more often than not, would just take care of that person. Right now, guess what? Sears ain't around no more. Right? Yeah. As broad and as ubiquitous and as ostensibly American as Sears was, Sears ain't around no more, right? Yeah. You need to be something like Nordstrom's with a tremendous luxury markup to have these super broad refund policies. So again, I think it's rigorous. And to your point, even within that rigor, CIG still functions as human, right? And there's still human beings involved that are leaning in and making decisions that make sense to support people, right? And if they ever get sued, that'll just bolster their case.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, this idea of that once you put your money in, there's no way to get it out. Well, there's lots of ways to get it out, but read the fine print, right? Don't put any more money in than you're comfortable with. This game requires $45.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Let me say something, 2 things before I forget. First of all, I was reading Hey It's Nick's comment, which is funny. Hey It's Nick saying that they do it to cover their ass and not protect the consumer. That's not what a term of service is. A term of service is an agreement so that we understand where we both stand on this project. It's like going into a casino in Las Vegas. You know that the house that the betting leans toward the house, but you decide to play anyway. As a consumer, you could say, hey, I know this thing is all leaning toward the house. I'm not going here and play my money, but we still do it. And we do the same thing with Star Citizen. We know that, yes, of course, they're going to protect themselves as a business, but it's also the fact that we agree. We sign off every time we go to that little window and check that box and say, okay, CIG, you say that this ship may not look like this at the end of the thing, but I'm going to buy it anyway. Or this ship may not be the carrot killer, but I'm going to buy it anyway. Okay, so don't try to put that on them. I'm sorry. That is an agreement. We can always say no. We can always walk away and not do it. But the reality is we do. The other thing that I was laughing at was Chauvin's answer. Chauvin sent this to you, Captain. Blame Craftsman Tools. They had a lifetime guarantee with no questions asked.
Right? No, tell the truth.
Which is hilarious, but it's the truth. I mean, it is the truth. And don't get me wrong. I think that there was a time when taking care of the customer earned something to it, but customer loyalty changed over the years.
Right.
People don't care about that anymore. So that model just goes out the window, But anyway. But yeah, Nick, I'm not picking on you. Hang on, Nick, I'm not picking on you. I just wanted to emphasize the fact that we want to be fair about this thing, because we actually had terms of service up and we dropped it because it was a huge subject, because the terms of service has changed over the years. Admittedly, it has. It was much more open and broader in the beginning. Now it is much more narrow and restrictive than it was in the past. But that's also because the development process has changed, I think, over the years. And they have to protect themselves. I'll call it for what it is. They do have to protect themselves as a company.
Go ahead, Cap, then I'll go.
I was just going to say, I agree. Let's make no mistake. This is an ongoing business concern, right? Mm-hmm. This isn't the Cloud Imperium Games nonprofit. This isn't the Cloud Imperium Games community. This is the Cloud Imperium Games Inc., right? So this is an ongoing business concern that has business realities and legal realities and financial realities. Within that, though, there are human beings that have consistently tried to forge community. And for those of you that were at CitizenCon, you saw it manifest. It's just true, right? There are business relationships that I have in my investments. There's business relationships I have around the corner that don't have the community experience and the community feel that I've had with this project. So things can be more than one thing. Things can have certain components within that other thing. But there are ways that you can do business that are really rapacious and really replete with scamology. And there's things that are just innovative and inventive, and because they're unfamiliar, they make us uncertain, right? And we got to really be able to distinguish between the two. Yeah. So, sorry, Fastcart, go ahead.
No, I just want to say that do not use CIG or Star Citizen or Squadron 42 as a savings and loans account. Do not think that you can put money in and then easily get that money out. That's what.
Right.
That's basically what we're saying. Even though there are avenues, sometimes be sure what's the money that you're putting into the game. That's all we ask. And
we had an investor versus backer versus donor conversation, Fastcart, right. You, Meg, and I the other week.
Right. And as far as when they change the terms of service and you go to sometime, to me, this is just how it seems to me. I'm probably wrong. Sometimes it seems like the changes follow lawsuits or happen right after lawsuits. So that's why to me it seems like sometimes they change the term of service right after some kind of verdict that we may or may not know about. That's what I.
Well, having been with organizations that do like location-based entertainment and gaming, not Dave and Buster's, but like Dave and Buster's, right? When we do contracts, you do parties, you do things like that. Terms of service, the contract, the legalese, the boilerplate, the hold harmless language. Yeah, sometimes it changed because you had an incident, but sometimes it would change because there's an incident in the business sector, right? Or sometimes it would change because the laws changed, right? So it can be something that your organization experienced directly, but it can also be like, oh, we see this competitor's going through this thing. Let's change our terms and conditions accordingly. Or it could be EU law has changed, right? So we need to change. Like there's been a lot of more data protection legal developments that have manifest that the EU
and that's
has
probably
driven.
what I'm referencing. The EU law changed, and that's what made them change. So that's a
Fastcart, I think it could be all of it. I mean, there
Right.
have been the lawsuits. There have been those times where they've had to go back and probably have to reevaluate. There's the process of how far along the game has come along. There are the international laws and local law. There's a lot of stuff there that could lead to why these updates and changes come about. But that's why, as a consumer, it's important for us to. Yeah, I know it's difficult to have to sit there and read it, but that's one of the reasons why the terms of service pops up as the very first thing when you click on the launcher. And every once in a while, you need to look at it just to make sure that you understand what's being said there, and there's nothing's misconstrued, because you are still making an agreement when you decide to play Star Citizen.
But final point about the boat thing. There are people who believe like the game developers should be working on the game 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. They don't deserve a vacation. Let the man get a vacation sometime. He works hard. I mean, as far as I know, he still codes the game. So let him have a ride. Let him enjoy himself once in a while, okay? I don't think it's a big deal. That's just me.
Whatever you want that maximizes your work experience where you work, you should want that for everybody else.
Thank you. All right, so let's move on. The great micromanager. Basically, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to present this as a question to you guys. One of the things we would quite often hear about Chris Roberts personally, and why the impact that he would have on development, was that he was a perfectionist, that he was a micromanager. I'm curious to know whether you see any good sides to that or bad sides to that from your perspective. Is this just something that people have often tossed around out there as to why the project is delayed, why it's taking so long? Because he's a micromanager, he's looking over people's shoulders, or he wants this perfection thing. Any feedback you guys have about it? I've got my own theory, and I'll save my theory for the end, but I'm curious as to, guys, what do you guys think? Do you think that if that is the case, pros and cons to it?
I've heard that he is a perfectionist, and there's nothing really wrong about that. But what I've also heard is that Aaron Roberts is the one who try to not, I don't want to say manage Chris Roberts, but manage his expectations. Say, maybe we could do that, or maybe this will take time. So there's a yin and yang in there. Like Chris Roberts is a dreamer, but Aaron Roberts is more of a realist. And in terms of micromanaging, Chris Roberts may say, you can do this, do this, but he had a dream, he had an image in his head or a visual in his head that he wants to see in the game, and he wants to do his best to present it to the rest of us, the community. So I don't really see anything wrong with that. It can get out of hand sometimes, but I don't. In my opinion, it hasn't reached that point to me yet.
So I remember being in a restaurant chain called Houston's. Houston's Restaurant. And the reason I remember my first time there was because I feel like my water got filled up by the server like 23 times, and I never saw the server do it. And then I remember being in Houston's in Manhattan at the City Court Plaza before they opened. We were sitting in there for some reason right before they opened. And they had all the wait staff lined up, and everybody had to wear white. and somebody didn't have something on that was right, and they sent them home. Right? They sent them home. And then I heard that the Houston CEO spent most of his time flying around the country just popping in on the restaurants. And so they never knew if the CEO was going to be up in the spot. Right? Now, some folks would call that micromanagement. But I can tell you that what it ended up being for the diner was a consistently high quality experience. Right? And so when I think about that in the context of Chris Roberts, I have no idea really. And unless you're there and you see it or you're dealing with it, I have no idea whether he's a micromanager. I have no idea what people's definition of micromanagement is and whether it's fitting that definition. I think their definition might be different from mine. You know, if you run an agile shop and you have a huddle every morning, right, and you're dividing up work on the basis of these agile tools, is that micromanagement or is that detailed management? Is that effective management? Well, here's what I know. Wing Commander series of games came out. They got done. They were good, right? Privateer was good. Freelancer was good. Starlancer was good. Wing Commander Academy or Wing Commander Armada or whatever, we're not going to talk about that one. But all the other ones, the stuff got done, right? And you know, some people define execution as the discipline of getting things done. And along the way, you try to have a culture that doesn't scorched earth the thing, but the result is the result, right? Either you got it done or you didn't. And so, and it was either at a level of quality or it wasn't. So part of the reason I'm involved in this project is because there's been a history of things that have gotten done that I've been able to play that were of a level of quality and storytelling that I enjoyed, right? And so if he's a micromanager and that micromanagement is going to get this thing done in the 2020s in a way that is going to be a modern expression of that high level of quality, more power to him, right? I just hope that the culture isn't scorched earth on the way to getting there, but only people who are inside could tell you that.
Yeah. My feeling about the idea of micromanaging, obviously micromanaging drives the people who are being micromanaged crazy. Right? It doesn't drive the micromanager crazy. It drives people who are under it. But to your point, Cap, micromanagement can also be very subjective. I've shared this story before. If you guys haven't had a chance to watch on Disney, there's a series on for Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, and it's multiple episodes. If you get a chance to watch it, it's really, really good to watch. If you guys have ever watched the behind the scenes videos for any of the Star Wars films, particularly Phantom Menace but actually any of them, but particularly like for New Hope and Phantom Menace and Empire. One of the things that's very interesting is that George Lucas would come in, he'd set up storyboards, they'd go through the storyboards, he'd sit there with all of his department heads, and he would basically go through the effects areas, and he would say, this is physical, you know, in other words, they build a set for this, and then this is going to be green screen. And he'd do that. He'd do this for the whole show. And then everybody would sit there and look and, okay. And then he'd say, okay, that's it. And he'd leave. And then when they would leave, they would say, how the hell are we going to do this? We don't have the technology for it. I mean, it was never like, oh, we're going to, in other words, Lucas didn't come in saying we're going to do what we did before, but we're going to do something different. And everybody who was at that table sat there perplexed. They literally had to create the technology and create what it was they needed to do to accomplish that vision. Now, I'm not saying that Chris Roberts is George Lucas, but what I am saying is that there is a pattern here that says if you want to do the same thing you did before, then yeah, you could just go in and do that. But if you're trying to transcend what you did before and do something better and change the way things are done, then that brings a higher level of challenge to those that work around you. Now, for some people who may have sat under Chris Roberts and felt that, you know, he said, this way we're going to design the ship this way. This is what I want. It gets final approval, right? This person works on this thing for a month or 2 months or 3 months. They turn it into Chris Roberts. And then Chris Roberts says, no, change this. And then the person gets upset and says, well, I did exactly what you told me to do before. Now you want me to change it again? The question is that a good or bad? Is that a waste of time? Because now Chris has thought about it more and sees something different that maybe he didn't see, or maybe something changed in another section of the game or whatever. but he wants to make it the best that it could be. Now, does that add more time to the process? Possibly it does. Those things happen. Changes do happen. Now, the question becomes, how often does it happen, right? Does it happen behind every single thing? Does it happen every time we get something that it seems to be these changes? Well, then maybe we're talking about something that there's a problem there. But to your point, Fastcart, there are other people that are buffers between Chris Roberts. There are the Brian Chambers, the Aaron Roberts. There are all the other people that are on these upper level people that we see, the pillar people that we talk about, the pillars, right? Who also are there to help buffer some of that. But at the same time, it's Chris's vision. Fastcart, you and I were talking about this before about the Star Wars franchise. When Star Wars was remastered, for those of you who are too young to remember, 1977, 20 years later, George Lucas says, I'm going to redo the films. He not only cleaned them up visually, in the sense of the digital things were much better now. So now they could get rid of all the strings and wires and all the matte stuff. It looked perfect. But he also said, I'm going to put some things in the story that weren't here in the beginning. Things like Jabba the Hutt meeting him for the first time with Han Solo. There were other sequences. Tatooine, when they went into Mos Eisley, it looked very barren before. Now there were creatures walking around and people. And the fans went nuts. They went crazy. Don't change our film that we paid for these original films. This is the nostalgia we grew up on. Don't mess with it, blah, 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 blah. They actually literally protested that they weren't going to support anything else with George Lucas if he touched those films. Those films got re-released into the theaters and they blew up. They blew up. People enjoyed the stew out of them. But my reason why I'm saying this is this. Regardless to how you felt, I grew up, I was one of those people who stood in line for the first Star Wars movie, stood out there for hours and hours and saw it literally. I think I saw the first Star Wars movie like 23 times. I was one of those people. But ultimately, Star Wars was George Lucas's project. It was his baby. When he finished the first movie, he said, it wasn't like he thought about it 20 years later. He said, I couldn't do all the things I wanted to do. The technology wasn't there. The money wasn't there. The time wasn't there. So he goes back later, spends his own money to make the film the way he wants it. And regardless of how I felt about the first movie, whether I believed that Han shot first or didn't shoot first, whatever the case may be, it was still his baby. And I had to be willing to say, do I want to go for that ride or not? Now, I could have protested and said, I'm not going to see another Star Wars film ever because he messed around with those first films. Or I could have sat back and said, let's see what he does. And my suggestion to many people about this project is the same thing. Yeah, I can understand the nostalgia and the feeling and the want for certain things, but things will change in the process of this game. And my thing about the micromanaging is this: if it brings us a better game, if it takes a little bit longer, but ultimately it's the game we want. Do we want the average of what's always been pushed out? We're going to talk about these games in a little bit when we start talking about the Star Citizen. What do we call them, Fastcart? The Star Citizen killers, right? Do we want one of those Star Citizen killers, or do we want the game that's going to be around for a long time?
So or do we want a game that'll be out for 10 years or 20 years from now?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And from a psychology perspective, there's Star Citizen and there's Squadron 42. Mm-hmm. Squadron 42 is feature complete. Mm-hmm. So for the people that are like, well, can Chris Roberts ever stop meddling? Can he stop taking them back? And can he let it come? It's feature complete, mm-hmm. which means that he has seen from a vision standpoint what he wants to see in the features and the experience of the game. And now it's just about polishing those features to a retail readiness, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So, I remember it wasn't too long ago that we were supposed to get a cut or a view of Squadron 42. And instead, we got the behind the scenes of the decision not to give us the cut. Mm-hmm. Right?
2016.
Yeah. And that was Chris Roberts going, it's not at where I want it to be.
Yeah.
And at that point, it might have been reasonable to say, will it ever be? Well, the fact is, the reality is, it is where he wants it to be. It is feature complete, and we are getting it after the polish phase. So that's exciting.
I just want to say thank you for the follow, Gallo Loco Extreme, and thank you for the follow, Rum mm-hmm. Bandit. I appreciate it.
Rum Bandit, yeah.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
So I just want to say, Griffin talking about the George Lucas video. There's a video from I want to say 2012, 2013. It might be the GDC video, or it might be the 2013 CitizenCon video, where Chris Roberts is giving his version of a dream, and then you cut to the developers, and they have a similar look to what the producers or graphic designers at LucasArts had. So there is a parallel between. So they're like, how are we going to do all that? So yeah, they had a similar look in some of those videos. With that, we're going to move on to financial transparency. So yeah, I'm going to click on this real quick and get to this VentureBeat article. Star Citizen interview why Chris Roberts raised another $46 million to finish the sci-fi universe. So this is well, it came out in 2018, but yeah.
That was the marketing. That was for the marketing money, if I'm not mistaken. Fastcart, that particular article.
That's the marketing for Squadron 42 in particular.
Right. But why don't you elaborate on that, Cap?
Well, yeah, we talked a little bit about this during the investor piece, but what they wanted to do was to bring in money that was going to be specifically for the marketing of Squadron 42. And they were willing to give up anywhere between 10 and 25%. I've seen different numbers of the ownership of the company to investors. And essentially those investors, the way that Chris Roberts talks about it is they had a lot of venture capital caps who came at them about trying to get into the project, and they met with different people, and the vibe wasn't right. They were getting publisher vibe. They were getting, I want return on investment immediately vibe. But when they met with Clive Calder and what Clive Calder calls the family, the family office or the family project of investments, when they met with Keith Calder, his son, Keith Calder and his wife have a company called Snoot Entertainment that does some investing in these types of projects. When they met with them, they got along really well, and it seemed like the Calders got the fact that, Chris must have looked at them and said, listen, this is gonna take as long as it takes. And the bottom line is I'm gonna do it the way I need it to be done. And they're like, do whatever it is you need to do. We're here for the long term. We're here to be a part of the project. And so they must have said the right things that Chris allowed them into the space. And then it was very clear that it's not our money that is providing the marketing for Squadron 42. It is somebody else's money.
Right.
And that somebody else has bought into the project in a way that allows Chris and Aaron and the C-suite and Sandy and others to do it the way they feel it needs to be done. So,
Did you want
I thought was interesting.
Did you want to read this part that
I can read it real quick. It was just some highlights from the article. I'll read it real quick. This is from GamesBeat, guys. It says, on some of the details here, you're required in some way to report financials for a particular regulatory reason, or were you? And Chris Roberts says, we're split between the UK operation, which handles the rest of the world, and the US operation, which handles North America. There are 2 Cloud Imperium entities in the UK. Even if you're a private company, you have to post your financials and board of directors and everything for on Company House, which is the UK's regulatory body. We've been doing that for quite a few years. One problem we have is everyone just looks at the headlines, such as Star Citizen raises $200 million. So they immediately think we're off on a deserted island sipping pina coladas and on the back of a super yacht. But we have 500 odd people in 5 studios spread around the world, and it costs money to run an operation like that. The money we bring goes all.
Captain Jones.
Captain Jones. Thank you, Captain Jones. Goes all into development. So we said, maybe if we're just open about it and show the financials, people will understand that. Of course, there will probably be some people that won't, because we can't do anything, and we can't do anything about that. That was the impetus for sharing the financials with the community. It's something we've discussed internally for a long time. Just because we feel like we owe it to everybody who supports us, we're open about development, so why not be open about the other stuff? So the reason why we're mentioning that, guys, is that the information is out there. If people have questions about the spending, the finances, again, like we said earlier, who's on the board of directors, all that stuff, it doesn't take much to dig it up. Even on RSI's or Cloud Imperium's website, they will post their annuals there too. So just be aware that the information is out there. And that's one of the myths, where's our money going? Where we're spending it on. You can go there and you can find out that information.
Yes, you can.
Again, Captain Jones, thank you for the 5 gifts. Appreciate it. Thank you. Go ahead, Cap.
No, I was just saying I agree.
Oh, okay. Cool. All right, so yes, that is that. And, up next we have, Sandy Roberts is unqualified to be Vice President of Marketing. This was, I don't know when this started. When do you think this started, Griff? Or Cap, if you know?
So there was an escapist article that did Sandy no service in terms of, it said something about, she didn't like this black woman being at the front desk in CIG, and it painted her as slightly prejudiced and all this other stuff. And it's after that I started seeing this whole narrative of like, why is she in the project at all? And I think it was the first time that people broadly became aware that Chris and Sandy were a couple with kids, right? Now, some people pay attention to the project knew that well before the escapist article, right? But that was the first time people became broadly aware of it, and they decided on the basis of that article that they were going to make some judgments about Sandy's qualifications to be involved in the project. She's, first of all, she's a co-founder, right? So if I'm a co-founder, I'm involved in the project however I want to be involved in the project, right? So just that in there, but
because it was their money. Because it was their money.
Correct. When they started, that was about coming out of their right. Anything Chris wanted to do, that's what we are doing. Right. But what's important to understand about Sandy's background, is that probably 10 years before Chris came to her and Chris went to GDC and they did any of that, she had her master's in business and marketing. Right. So she was an assistant director at Fox Studios in Australia. She did hosting of shows on MTV Asia Pacific. Right. So she's an actress. Right. So she has been in the world of entertainment and developing entertainment product. And she was doing that for upwards of a decade before Star Citizen even came around. Now, there's a lot of people who do marketing who don't have degrees in marketing, but I can tell you that in my experience, the people who have degrees in marketing are much better at telling you why they're doing a particular thing in the marketing space than people who don't. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. What means everything is results, right? And so there's no doubt that Sandy put CIG on the platform that it's been on in terms of marketing in ways that have delivered the results. I think that even internally, they were blown away by what happened from the website to the Kickstarter to the website, break it down to the new website to the to blowing away all the stretch goals, right? I think they had a strategy. She was central to that strategy. So when people say she's unqualified, they'd have to tell me what qualified looks like.
Right. And I'm going to be real quick for Griff goes. It's that they made so much money, especially doing a Kickstarter, even now, that they continue to make money. How is she unqualified? How are the people saying that Star Citizen is a bad business model and stuff like that? But yeah, those are my questions. But go ahead, Griff.
I think some of the unqualified came from what Cap mentioned a few minutes ago. There was this feeling of, because this was another thing that got stirred up as a big deal, was that there was the what's the word? God, just flipped out of my head that quick. Family thing.
Nepotism?
Nepotism, right? Because you've got Aaron Roberts, his brother, and then, as you mentioned, Cap, some people didn't know that Sandy was married to Chris, even though there are tons of pictures and things of them together forever since the beginning of the project. And to a certain point, whose business was it anyway? I mean, I didn't know for years that Ben's wife was the person that was working in marketing too. Ben Lesnick's wife, right? It took a while before I realized Alexis. But that's because Alexis' last name was Lesnick. I finally heard it one day and said, oh, that's his wife. But I don't go around looking at the show saying who's married to who on the project. Now, for some reason or other, we as backers feel like we need to know who's married to who. But I think the fact that where she was at her level, There also might have been a little bit of jealousy because a lot of these jokers wanted to hit on Sandy and found out that she was married.
Not only can you not hit on her,
she was the face.
But she's the big dog's wife, right?
Well, yeah, but she was the face. Remember when we started out conventions? Sandy was the person who came out on stage first and introduced everybody. And there were a lot of backers out there who fell in love with Sandy Gardner, right? So I'm just saying, I don't know what all the motivations were, but my point is that, and to your point, Cap, and to your point, Fastcart, she has done an outstanding job within the position that she was in, working with marketing, getting things off the ground. And some people, but well, she wasn't in gaming. You don't have to be in gaming if you've gone to school for marketing. You can apply marketing skills and strategies almost in any area. You just need to do your research, and that's what she did. And we have to applaud them. Fastcart, you always talk about, who is it who always says that CIG has the worst business model? Who's our favorite publication?
OP.
Yeah. They'll say this the worst business model, but yet and still they've made a ridiculous amount of money, which we just don't understand. But anyway, I think that's where some of it may have come from, with her being quote unquote unqualified.
She is qualified. But and now she stepped down so for a couple of years
right
now, so
yep.
Yeah.
They passed off marketing to a company now that I think that does it, and some people who work internally on it.
Okay.
They still got a chief marketing officer, Elliot Chin. And their partnership with some of these third parties is simply extending the framework that she put in place.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. So up next we have. Okay. Here we go. Up next we have Star Citizen can't be made ever. Do you want me to play the audio on this or
no?
You know what? No. Yeah. No.
Okay, I will play the audio. But go ahead.
Yeah, you got to earn your voice. You got to earn your voice on this channel.
Star Citizen can't be made ever. Think very smart. But this is the video that this is from who is it? The Season Money talking about their thoughts about Derek Smart and some of the stuff that's going on between Star Citizen and Chris Roberts and Derek Smart. So that in chat real quick. Right, go ahead.
Let me see if I can pull something from the musings page that maybe can help people understand what this was. So some of you may remember that there were, in particular, a developer who, Derek Smart, who was one of the most vocal, outspoken people about the project. Now, Derek admittedly had originally signed up for the project, had supported and backed the project, but at some point he began to question some of the decision-making and the development ideas for Star Citizen. And both on the CIG forums as well as his own forums and blogging. And he had a voice in the community. Derek Smart was a very well-known industry professional for many, many years. And so a lot of people who listened to Derek started to raise those same issues and questions. But Derek, or Mr. Smart, took it to a level of saying that there were certain things technologically that could not be pulled off. Sometimes it would be qualified. Sometimes it would be they would need this much money in order to do it. I think if I'm remembering correctly, FC at one point he said they'll need at least $200 million, which back then sounded ridiculous because we're talking about back when they only had like maybe 40 or $50 million. So to say that they needed 150 or 200 million seemed like such a number that was so far away. But then of course. Yeah.
Real quick to your point, that he also made a statement saying they would need 10 years to make Pursuit Planet a thing. They did it in 3 months. But go ahead, continue, please.
Oh, no, he would need 10 years.
No, I'm saying that's what he said, though. That's what he said.
Yeah, but he said certain things were not going to be able to happen technically, or they would need a lot of time to do them. But what we have seen is that over the years, many of the, I'll just say, concerns that he had, we've seen them slowly dissolve. We've seen them achieve many of the things that he would talk about. Now, again, the perspective, I'm not sure what the measuring bar was for him. If he was using the measuring bar based upon technology today or based upon his own level of design, whether he was saying certain things would not or could not be done. in some ways he was right. They did need more than $200 million to be able to do this project. They did need at least 10 years to do it. So in some areas, very much correct. But the problem was that he wasn't stating it from an informative position of saying, well, we want you guys to know that it's going to take at least 10 years to see this. He was saying it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because they'll need to do this in order to this, and it's not going to happen. Or the funding will dry up. There's no way that the money's going to continue to come in order for them to support a project of this scale. Okay. Quite often he believed that they would have to scale back on things, that they wouldn't be able to deliver certain things, that they would basically have to deliver an average version of what the original pitch and dream was. So this went on for quite a few years and got to be very not hostile. That's not the word I want to use, but it did get pretty adversarial. Yes. In many magazines. And I want to ask you guys about this. And I've said this before on Soul Voices, and I don't think I've ever presented it here, but I've always been a bit disappointed that gamers who used to be the people who dreamed and desired for something more have become cynical. That you know, for the magazines and periodicals and the journalists, for them to question it, because quite often they don't understand everything about development, and for them to hear of a project that's lasting this long or is making so much money, to a certain degree, I understand their questioning. You know, they're there to ask questions, and that's okay to ask questions. I'm not saying they should just fall right in line. But I have become disappointed that gamers have become so jaded and cynical, and partially not their fault. The industry has made them that way. Loot boxes, failed projects, failed Kickstarters, rip-offs of projects that never came into fruition over time could kind of build that cynicism. But I am somewhat disappointed that gamers are no longer the dreamers. And maybe it's because we've been burnt so much. Maybe it's because we've been bitten so many times that we no longer can feel like we can afford to be that vulnerable. But for me, I'm still can be that with this project. You know, to steal from CaptainSeriousSFun as always, I have room for one Star Citizen. I can't be this way for every project that's out there. I'd be in the nut house.
Oh Lord!
But to have one project that I can honestly hope will be that thing, and as long as I see evidence, I'm not trying to be blind about this. I'm not trying to be, but for so many gamers to have jumped on board with Derek's negativity, I was always surprised. I was always surprised that people were quoting him as an authority. Maybe it was because he was a game developer, you know. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Let me say this, and I have not publicly spoken about my views on Derek Smart until this moment. So you getting a hot Derek Smart opinion. When you say Derek Smart, maybe he wasn't informed. Derek
Wait a minute,
Smart.
Don't say his name 3 times in a row. You know the rumor, right? Say it 3 times in a row, he shows up.
Pop up.
Too late.
I wish he would show up, right? I feel like he knows exactly what he's talking about when he talks about this idea that when he sees hype, when he sees dreaming, when he sees big, ambitious, hairy, audacious goals, because that's the way he hyped up his game.
Yeah.
Battlecruiser 3000 AD. In 2003, GameSpy listed its 25 most overrated games of all time. Battlecruiser 3000 AD was number 19. Due to the hype Smart produced with his gameplay promises that he would be ultimately unable to fulfill. Battlecruiser 3000 AD was listed by GameSpot as the most, they say, quote, "It will go down in legend as one of the most bug-ridden, unstable, unplayable pieces of software ever released." And Next Generation said that the patches for it broke as many elements as they fixed. Now, sometimes Star Citizen functioned like that.
Sometimes, yes, fair.
So maybe he thought game recognizes game. And I know that I was full of crap when I was making the promises I make. So I see myself in this project. And the problem is, just because a thing is presenting the same way doesn't mean people are functioning with the same mindset, the same approach, the same ethos, right? So there have been lots of folks who actually reviewed and dealt with the products of Derek Smart, who were saying things that he ended up saying about Cloud Imperium because he thought they were functioning the way he was functioning. But actually, no, this project was going for something much bigger. And what's crazy about it, I think in his heart of hearts, he may have been trying to go for something much bigger, but just couldn't bring it home. Right? And so then he decided to say, well, because I couldn't do it, it can't be done. Right? No, you couldn't do it with Battlecruiser 3000 AD. You couldn't get it done.
But
right?
Derek became, but let me throw something at you though. The thing that was unique about Derek, and we're not picking on Derek, but this is a part of the history of what happened with why so many people felt a certain kind of way about Star Citizen. There was some level of credibility that Derek had, not just his voice with blogging and all that, but there was something that people just gave him credibility on that allowed that negativity to blossom. And I mean, to the point where people were bringing him on their shows, interviewing him, magazines were interviewing him, getting his opinion on whether or not this could be accomplished and done. And that blew out. I mean, you know, that level of, I'm not going to use the word propaganda, but that level of information permeated in places, you know what I mean? People don't even know about Star Citizen, never played Star Citizen, heard his voice more than it was because they played the game for themselves and tried it out. It was because they heard that Star Citizen is a failure or a scam or not going to happen or is impossible to do. You know, what gave him such a resonant voice that so many people heard that more than as gamers just tried the game for themselves and said, let me see what it's like.
The corollary to a lie gets around the world before the truth gets its pants on. Is the current environment of discourse around gaming, right? So, you know, anytime there's some negativity, for some reason the algorithms will make that catch fire.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you post consistently about it, you know, you become a voice in that space. You have folks that are refundians who have had moments where they've posted consistently about it and gotten their 15 minutes of fame in different corners and places.
Yeah.
Derek was published by Take-Two Interactive. He was published by Interplay, right? These things happened. He had credibility, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's, for me, that's how I see it. Fastcart, what about you?
So I'm just going to reference one of these articles called Star Citizen Year 6. This was obviously the 6th year Star Citizen. He posted one of the messages from the chairman's club news and stuff about special announcement. Aftermath kit, it was Aegis Dynamics and Wave 1 and Wave 2 and Wave 3. This is back in, I want to say, 2018, okay? So he posted that, then said, all things considered, I'm going to highlight here because it's probably too small for people to see. I'll put it in the link in a bit. But all things considered, when you look at the current state of the game, what they have in here and there right now, etc., it's easy to see that even after raising over $200 million, that was back then, they still haven't delivered even the base game for which they raised over $3 million back in November 2012. Nor the overscope game for which they raised $55 million in November 2014. So it stands to reason that they had not continued to monetize scope creep for only intended purposes. The project would have failed since 2015. Right around the time sources told myself and the Escapist magazine that they were running out of money and had barely enough funds for 90 days of operation. So I don't know how people can still listen or give credence to some of the stuff that said that obviously has been proven untrue later on. And what Griffin, you talk about why gamers are like this. I blame tribalism, because some people say, like, in order for you to succeed, someone else had to fail, and instead of like what is it? You're supposed to raise all boats. I don't know why.
Rising tide, yeah, rising tide.
Rising tide raises all boats. So I don't know why people go the negative way instead of trying to raise everyone, and so everyone can concede. I don't see that. Maybe it's a generational thing. I'm not sure, but tribalism seems to play a part in my opinion. You have to tear Star Citizen down in order to raise another game up. And we'll get to some of the game's examples in a bit. But one of the other things, like, Xbox did have I guess it continues to have like a voice in the game development community, because I want to say like 7-8 years ago, there were people saying that they wish Chris Roberts and Xbox would team up to finish Star Citizen. That is the actual quote that someone said. And I believe it was in a video or article, video. So yeah. So, what have you?
Good point.
All right.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No. I'm done, really.
Oh, you're done? Okay. All right. So, up next, we have Suncoast Galaxy. You want to cover that? Take that one?
Yeah. I do want to say, if you don't mind, because of the time where we are right now, I want to skip. I want to go back to something that was said on the Escapist article.
Okay, I think we skipped that one.
Yeah, I know, but this is a point I want to mention based on what you just shared, and I'm going to put the article in. I'm going to put the
I got it.
The link. No, this is a different link. This is an entirely different link. Yeah, I actually put the wrong link in for that one. This is an archive link there if you guys want to see it. But this is interesting. It says, Star Citizen employees speak out on project woes. This was also in Escapist, okay? But what was interesting about this was the person basically said the reason why they thought the project would fail is because it was too ambitious. And this goes back to my question I was asking earlier. When did gamers start worrying about being too ambitious? I mean, developers, I can understand it. Like I said, the old George Lucas thing, right? The people sit there and say, how the heck are we supposed to do this? We don't even have the tech. Well, Lucas was being ambitious. Yeah. What happens when your staff thinks that? When the people who are working don't have the vision has not caught on with them. I'm not saying that you can't be pragmatic and try to be realistic. But George Lucas had to have people around him who believe that we don't know how we're, but this guy believes we will. You know what I'm saying? What happens when the people that work with you don't have that vision or see the vision that you see? If their vision is the average workaday world in game development, or to produce what has always been produced, what impact does that now have? And then when their voice goes out, and then we give them a certain level of respect because they work in the industry, and then they go out and publish something and get an interview and say, well, he's being too ambitious. I don't know. I don't know where you find the balance in that, because
my guess is it's an evolution, Griff. I would imagine that CIG is much better now at connecting people to the vision, because it's been refined and refined and refined than they may have been earlier on, right? Where you got a bunch of people who may be all dreaming, but are they dreaming the same dream, right? Yeah. And if they're dreaming a slightly different dream, then as things change, some people catch feelings because that wasn't part of my dream about it. So I think earlier on, you had a lot of the same problems in the backer community as you had on staff, right? And then as Chris as a human being and Aaron and others started to refine the dream and started to become clearer, right? Then people who wanted to be about that dream were able to buy in more fully. And now they can onboard people to a very clear vision, right? So I think that happened as an evolution. I think there were some components of it that were immutable and that have been around since the beginning, right? We're going to do a game that's going to lead to a persistent universe. Like, I'm a PC guy. Like, there's some stuff that's just been that was compelling in the 2012 videos, right? But other stuff has evolved, and So I think that they're much better now with that internal messaging than maybe they were earlier on. I haven't been there, but you don't see a lot of people. I mean, you see one or two, but you don't see a lot of people going to outlets talking about how we can't agree on anything internally. Right?
Yeah.
You don't see that, and outlets are asking, right? Yeah. Outlets are hitting LinkedIn, going, "Hey, this is Kotaku. You want to tell us anything?" You know what I mean? They're asking. So
right. Royce, thank you so much for this.
Thank you for the subscription for 17 months. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So, Griffin, I am to answer your question. I'm not a developer, so I'm going to have to answer your question with a question, and I dislike doing this, but this is just to prove a point. Is game development in 2014 or the past 10 years, is it harder now to develop a game than it was 15 years ago? So it seems to me the answer is yes. So maybe these people who are employees or former employees haven't adjusted to the current modern standards or modern technology, and they're having trouble. Maybe some of them are having to adjust to meet the ambition that Chris Roberts have. That may be part of it. I'm not sure. I'm not a game developer.
That's a good point. I'll give you an example, fastcart. There are players, people I've heard, who are backers of Star Citizen, who will say, "Why is it necessary to be able to read the name on that screw?" You know what I'm saying? That level of
that's
ambition,
our level of detail, right?
Yeah. But I'm just saying they think, and I'm not trying to say anything negative toward them. I'm not when I say this. For them, it's not necessary. They can play the game, and that thing being there means nothing to them. And that's okay for them, right? But they will view that as that's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. It's not necessary. It's too ambitious. That level of detail. Who sees it? I mean, who's stopping and looking at the freaking plant and noticing that there's a worm crawling on it? Well, they may not be,
right,
but I am. And to me, that means something to me. Now, does that add more time to development? Probably. But,
well, I mean, to your question, though, Griff, and to Fastcart's question to the question, this has always been the case that there are games that if the buyer had alpha test level line of sight to the development, they would have questioned, "Do you need to do that?"
Right.
Ultima 4, or Ultima 4, Quest of the Avatar, that came out in 1985. Right? And it was this complex interplay of virtues that you had to manage in order to get to the final stages, right? And there were 8 virtues. I guarantee you that if that was open development, some group of people would have been saying, "Well, why you got to have 8 virtues? Is it 4 enough?
We only need 4, right?" No, that's true.
Why are you so ambitious?
That's true.
It's because they're seeing the sausage being made that they go, "Well, do we need all this sausage? Do you need all them spices?" Right? If the game just arrived, right, there would be a whole different conversation. It's because we're seeing it along the way. And so, Fastcart, I feel like there have been games that were groundbreaking and game-changing all along the way that if we saw it while it was being built, we would question, "Well, why are you going for that?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Nick dropped a good point here, and I remember this. He said about the moist eyeballs. People were like, "What do I care about moist eyeballs?" Right? But guess what? And I'm not picking on this game, y'all. I'm not picking on this game. But when Starfield came out, one of the things I heard people criticizing about was that their eyes looked dead. That was one of the biggest things. So it's just funny. We don't think about that level. And to your point, Cap, that sausage being made thing, in case y'all don't know what that means, I don't know if everybody in the room knows what that means.
Probably not. Go ahead.
I drop all kinds of stuff people don't know. They're like,
I do too.
The Ultima series. They're like, what games are those?
Yeah, right. I mean, watching sausage be made will make you not want sausage, y'all. That's basically what it comes. Okay. You just want that end product that you can bite into.
You're dropping out when you speak sometime.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
you're going in and out.
You don't want to see sausage being made because you don't want to eat it later on. That's all we're saying. Okay, you want the way that you just want to see the final product. But seeing sausages being made is not the greatest thing in the world. So to that point, I think you made a very good point there, Cap and fastcart. Both of you guys made great points on this question that he asked about why we feel a certain way about development. And we'll talk about that there's benefits to transparency and negatives to transparency. We need to move on because our time is flying by. So.
And Radua, thank you for the gifted sub to
Thank you, Rad.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You want to go to Destroyed or The Killers? Which one?
We're going to skip past Sunk Cost Galaxy. Let's just go ahead and go to Destroyed and pick that up from there because that's everybody will be familiar with that one, I think. Bonsai says, sausage being made.
So there is audio to this, but it's only 30 seconds long, and I got it on loop.
Yeah.
Well,
Why don't you give a prelude? Why don't you tell people what it is first? Because some people may not know. You can tell them
really
about
quick. Really quick. Shem Pasta, thank you for the gift sub.
Oh, thank you, Shem Pasta.
Thank you, Shem
Appreciate
Pasta.
it. So,
2016. Yeah, you can let it run. You can let it run, fastcart, while you're talking.
Oh, you let it run? Okay, I put it on mute.
Okay.
So 2016 CitizenCon, we go to Lear 3. This is the point that Griffin loved to make. And you see this pop up on Lear 3. The Great Sandworm. So this is 2016 CitizenCon during the presentation. And Destroyed Dream. I'm going to let Griffin take over for that.
Yeah.
Right? Destroyed Dream.
Yeah, the title of this is Destroyed Dune Dreams, to be specific. Yeah, when we saw this, fastcart was there with me. We were both in LA and everybody saw this thing and cheered. I mean, it was from a marketing standpoint, Cap. this was amazing to see at CitizenCon. But later on, within a year's time, another meme started, and the meme that still even to this, I saw it this year. Where is my sandworm? That still comes up every once in a while. Yeah, where's the sandworm? Okay. And so
I know where it is.
Yeah, I know where it is.
I know where it is
3.
It's on Lear 3.
Yeah, it's
on Lear 3.
Yeah, and so many of us, I'll say us, I wasn't included, but I'm saying it to sound inclusive. So many backers got so excited about this. And usually when something came out at CitizenCon, within a couple years, you'd see a lot of that stuff finally kind of slowly creep into the game. Well, the sandworm never showed up. And so, there was a conscious and subconscious thing with this particular clip that we're showing you guys. Probably 80%, 85% of the people in the room who witnessed this and people who watched CitizenCon were very familiar with the Dune franchise. And as you guys know, Dune is a very well-beloved science fiction franchise for folks who are geeks like us. And the idea of a quote-unquote sandworm, it's not called the sandworm, by the way, but the idea of it, that's what we called it, was the sandworm from Dune, was just something that hit us in our science fiction psyche. Deep down, we resonated with this thing, and we wanted to see it. And when it didn't come out, we held this as the main thing that CIG lied to us about. They lied to us because we were supposed to have the sandworm. And the reality is that when this video starts, and you guys can go back and watch it anytime you want, when it opens up within the very first few seconds in the bottom left corner, it says Lear 3. And as you guys know, CIG is really big on their lore. They decided to use a segment from this lore to introduce several things. They introduced the sandworm. Here's some things that they did give us that were in this same video. The Ursa rover was seen in this video.
Right, a whole bunch of stuff.
The constellation Aquila was introduced in this video. The Sand People with their uniforms was introduced into this video.
Dragonfly.
The Dragonfly introduced in this video.
Oh, Jay just said it in chat. Yeah.
The derelict javelin was introduced in this video. All these things were introduced in this video. The one thing that didn't show up, we have held on to and said, where's my sandworm? Where's my sandworm? Okay. So, again, these videos were done to give us ideas of concept and idea of where they wanted to go. It wasn't supposed to be delivery is coming within the next year, but it was to let us know where they wanted to go. But unfortunately, this became a thing, and it still is for many people. Where's the sandworm?
In Layer
Sandworm's
3,
not-
that's the answer.
It
Layer
ain't in
3.
Stanton. How about that? It ain't in Stanton. It ain't in Pyro. It ain't in Terra. It ain't in Magnus. I can take that all off your list. It ain't in Nick. Okay, y'all.
Nope.
It's not there. So let's let the Sandworm rest in peace until we get to Lear.
Oh, we
Okay?
get it, yeah. So, Simpasta, thank you for the 2 gift sub.
Thank you, Simpasta.
Mad Style, thank you for the
Mad Style.
subscription
Mad
for 36
Style.
months. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think I'm caught up. Simpasta again. Oh, that's
Yeah.
Simpasta gave 3 gift
Simpasta.
subs.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Yeah,
on a
thank
roll.
you for that. So yeah, I mean, like I was there in 2016. I saw it come up. I remember seeing, well, I think I might have forgotten Layer 3 at one point in time. I was like, so where's the Sandworm? Then I go back and say, oh, Layer 3. Okay, that makes sense. So I might have forgotten it at some point. So it might have been me doing wrong, but the problem is easily fixed if you do some research. Put it that way.
And what's funny about it is the backlash to this had CIG going, we're just such sci-fi fans that we want to have some fun.
Yeah.
But there's a percentage of the community that can't have fun with us in this way.
Why we can't have nice things.
Right. And so there might have been other references and other things that we might have had fun with but we can't do it this way at this type of event. We have to do other things. So
in the
that's too bad.
presentation, we had the Sand People because they had the clothing.
Yeah, I mentioned them.
Okay, my bad.
I mentioned that was another thing that we got.
Yeah, there's only so many different ways that you can have people running around in the sand and look, like they should be able to run around in the sand. So I'm like, so some of it may be an homage, some of it just may be practical.
Yeah, and some of it was, and there was a homage to Star Wars. There was the homage to Dune here. And it's not the first time they've done that. When they introduced the Reclaimer, if you guys remember, they did that whole trailer based on the movie Aliens. It's not the first time that they've done that. I'm not sitting around asking, where's the alien planet at? That's just what they use to introduce concepts and ideas to us. And we have to kind of be able to discern through that too, that, they're just giving us, again, it's proof of concept of what they want to be able to give in the game. So.
But I think this next part is going to be fun.
Okay.
The Star Citizen Killers. So we started off with Elite Dangerous. That was going to be a Star Citizen Killer back in it. Well, I don't have a video for Elite Dangerous, but yeah.
No, that's okay. Well, hold on to that. Showing that video there, because that one I want you to actually play. So just hold on to that one. Let's deal with Elite first.
All right.
I was an Elite player. Cap, you were an Elite player too, weren't you?
Yeah, I'm a lifetime expansion pass holder and premium beta.
Wow,
on Elite.
Both feet. You went in with both feet.
I got about 4,000 hours into Elite. Actually, this is an Elite hat. It's an Elite Dangerous hat.
Oh, check that out.
Yeah, big into Elite. Probably, spent in the thousands on their cosmetic store supporting the project. Have all the ships. Had the fleet carrier. 5 billion in credits.
Now, did you do beta?
Did beta. Was a premium beta player.
So I did that. I did beta, and I played up through just short of engineers. That's when I got out. Okay. But interestingly enough, and maybe Cap, you could probably talk about it in greater detail. I was not in the Elite community so much. I wasn't an org or, a group that I played with, but I didn't know that there was many people in the Elite community felt a certain kind of way about Star Citizen. I kind of looked at both those games. I knew David Braben, who was creating that. I knew Chris Roberts, who was creating that. I saw both of them talking about the games they wanted to create. I got behind both of them and financially supported them. I beta tested on Elite and enjoyed it. But I do remember just a little bit of chip on the shoulder with Elite players.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That their game was out. Now, maybe you could talk a little bit, because I didn't realize it was way more than a chip. I didn't know that.
It was absolutely an arrogance and a hostility on the Frontier forums, on the Elite Dangerous forums. There was an ongoing category to discuss Star Citizen, because they believed that Frontier and the Elite team, Sandra Sammarco and Ed Lewis and David Braben and everybody who was there at the beginning took the right, quote unquote, right path to development and got something done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And And
that was that was the big thing back then, right? It was like, why don't they do like Elite did, put the game out and then build on it from there?
Right.
That was a big thing that a lot of people were saying.
And there was such development up front on Elite, and it happened in such a way that people believed that every year they were going to get seasons and updates, and that there was going to be an annualized cycle to this thing.
Yeah.
Quiet as it's kept, Frontier as a company never really believed in Elite Dangerous as a product, right? If you all recall, they had Roller Coaster Tycoon and all these other Railroad Tycoon. They invested in Jurassic Park. They invested in Formula One. Ultimately, they did those things. But back then, they were Roller Coaster Tycoon and all Railroad Tycoon and all that stuff. These were games that they spent money on development. They told their CEO, go to Kickstarter to get money for this. Which meant that they didn't believe in it. And until he got millions in the Kickstarter, they weren't ready to invest in it. So when they did invest in it, and it wasn't like this phenomenal moneymaker, the development went away. Right. So you had all of this development up front. You had engineers, you had development behind that. You had they started to do the Thargoid reveal. Right. And they moved major storytellers, major game producers, major team runners like Michael Brooks, rest in peace.
Yeah, really.
They moved him to the Jurassic Park and other franchises. And they really stopped major development on Elite Dangerous to the point where today they have financially written off Elite Dangerous. So the fan base and the player base in Elite were on the forums talking all this junk about Star Citizen and its development model, because they were having all of these robust development experiences year on year in the early days, where now today you see major migration from Elite Dangerous to Star Citizen. And part of it is because, with the Odyssey update and Elite Dangerous, they promised things like Armstrong moments. Yeah. Right? Like stepping down out of your spacecraft and being like, one small step for CaptainSeriousFun, a giant leap for the Soul Citizens, right? Yeah. And instead, what you got was a blackout moment where you press the button, screen went black.
The infamous loading screen. Yeah. The infamous loading screen.
Right. Before Starfield, there was Elite with these loading screens.
Yeah.
And then they're looking at Star Citizen and they're seeing that we have so many Armstrong moments all the time that we don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah, we don't even think.
Like that,
how crazy it is.
The first time you open your ship and the hangar door dropped open so you can walk in, Armstrong moment, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. We go down and land on Aberdeen and we get out and we're having our Armstrong moment and we're not thinking, wow, I just stepped out onto a moon. We're thinking it's hot down here.
right.
We're managing other stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So,
yeah.
I do remember, and I didn't notice it. You know when I found out that the hostility was there, and this is a shame to say this, but because I had left right before Engineers, and wasn't really connecting with anybody, it was when Odyssey came out. I went back to Elite with the feeling of, I want to check out Odyssey. They're going to have this, being able to get out of your ships and walk around. And I started reading the forums a little bit, and I started listening to the community, and I started hearing, in particular, because again, the subject we're picking on right now, guys, is Star Citizen Killer. And there were people who were saying that Elite will be a Star Citizen killer. And then when they were going to go into Odyssey, if you don't know, the Odyssey was when we were going to be able to leave our ships and walk around and do stuff. That started to come back again. They're finally going to get it. And I started hearing all this, just really negativity towards Star Citizen that I didn't know existed within the community. And we had always had a very live and let live attitude toward Elite. It was kind of like, hey, if you like playing Elite, play Elite. They got great VR. They got this, that, and you can have fun with that too. But I didn't realize that there was this, in that community, such a negative vibe. Now, there have been plenty of people now, and I understand now the game is further along than it was back in 2015 when Elite came out. So people have been able to come into Elite now, and thankfully, and rightfully so, Star Citizen backers have embraced them and said, hey, yeah, come on in. Welcome to the club, But I was just so amazed that these were the two predominant space games, and for some reason there felt like there had to be some competition that existed, that one had to squash the other one. But if you saw Braben and Chris Roberts,
they didn't function like that.
They didn't function like that at all. They were supportive of each other's projects and cheered each other on. So
as long as we had been waiting, as long as we had been waiting for space games with high fidelity in these MMO worlds, Braben and Roberts were so excited that they were able to get it done.
Yes.
Right. And they every time you saw Elite post on something, you'd see Chris Roberts celebrate. You saw Chris Roberts post on something, you see David Braben celebrate.
You know.
Yeah,
I mean, irony.
Elite was. I was just gonna say real quick. Elite was a seeded VR reference experience, right?
Yes.
And the legacy right now of Elite Dangerous, to be very frank, is if you look up the word almost in the dictionary, there'll be a picture of Elite Dangerous there, right? The truth of it for me, and I imagine Kai Zen would say something similar, right? But the truth of it for me is that these two games launched about the same time. They had really meaningful arcs, and one is still going for the moonshot, and the other one has decided to come back down to Earth and do something else.
Yeah,
that's where they are.
And I'm glad you said that about the time frames, because the one highlight we want to mention. I'm sorry. One highlight we want to mention about the three games that we're going to mention right now is that they all actually started their development. Well, these two, the first two, all started around 2010, 2011. That's when they started forming this stuff. And it's 10 years later or 13 years later. So just keep that in mind with these games that we're going to be talking about. And then the third game we're going to talk about the time frame on that too. Go ahead, FC.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I'll do real quick. Master Blaster in chat says the space travel and smoothness of the flying in ED is still phenomenal. That's still a great game.
It is a great game. Oh, absolutely.
Still a great game.
Absolutely. But see, the problem is this. The development team, or the people who have supported them, and financially, the publishers, are the issue. That's the big issue that they've had with. There's no reason why Elite couldn't have been a better game. But here's the irony: Elite players are saying there ain't enough ships. We only got 32 ships. There ain't enough ships. You got people on the Star Citizen side saying, "Stop making ships.
Stop making ships. You got too many."
That the people in Elite are crying for more ships, and the people in Star Citizen are saying, "Stop making ships." But the funding is an issue, and their funding is a real issue over there with that game right now.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, Fastcart.
No problem. I just want to give Simpasta another shout out because they gave us another gift stuff. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Simpasta.
And InfoRunners, welcome to the stream. We gave you a shout out earlier, so welcome. I guess we summoned InfoRunners. We must have said their name 3 times. And this is your local producers trying to encourage our hosts to pick up the pace because we are going to run long. So yeah, we're going to move on to No Man's Sky. This is the trailer. It's on mute because I don't. We don't.
No. We want the audio for this one. So we want the audio, please. Yes, yes, please. So I'll go start from the beginning. Okay.
I'm going to come back and mute this thing.
Okay.
I thought at the beginning of that. I didn't catch the
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let's talk about this a little bit. Listen, I want to give some shout outs to Sean Murray and the folks over at Hello Games. No Man's Sky was a good example of what happens when you're under a publisher. Now, you guys know Hello Games is a small company, independent company. They'd done a few things before that, but this was their big project. And in 2013 at E3, we all got a chance to see the trailer for the first time, which was the first half of what we saw here. And of course, without the Jurassic Park music, okay? But we were all impressed and thought it looked really good. It was a different art style. But the idea of what they wanted to accomplish in this game was, again, ambitious. And this thing blew up big time, right? Microsoft sees this thing and decides to say, we're going to help. Sony. Thank you, Sony. Thank you. Yeah, the infamous Sony. Don't get me started on them. Sony sees them and says, we're going to give you $50 million to help you develop this project. But Sony also gave them a deadline of 2016. Now, take into consideration, There was a lot hanging on this, mainly the fact that they wanted to be able to release this for the holiday season on console. Hello Games started on this back in, I think, 2010 or 2011. E3, we get the trailer. So what? We're 4 years into it. And then another 3 years later, it launches. So 6 to 7 years of development on this game. It comes out, and we all know what happened. It wasn't ready. It wasn't ready. Okay. Fierce 8, don't you dare mention that, because that's what my Sony beef is about. Okay. So we aren't going to even go there. Okay. So 2016, one of the most catastrophic launches of a space game ever. People are disappointed. People are refunding. Hello Games literally goes underground. Death threats against Sean Murray. Listen, death threats against this guy.
Multiple death threats.
Unbelievable hostility
Crazy.
toward them because of the hype that had been built up by the players. Now, don't get me wrong. He was on TV and saying this is what he wanted to achieve and this was the game he was going to do. But it didn't deliver. It didn't deliver what it was supposed to do. Now, let's speed up the clock. And at this time, this game was going to be the Star Citizen Killer 2. Oh, you'll be able to land on planets and do this, that, and the other. And they've got trillions of worlds, not 100. I mean, this is going to blow Star Citizen out of the water too. And guess what? 12 years later, the game is now finally reaching the maturity of which Sean Murray stated that he wanted to do back in 2011, back at E3 in 2013. It's taken
25 named updates.
Yes.
25 of them.
And it has taken them literally 12 to 13 years to get the game where he wanted it to be. And guess what? It's not a global MMO with thousands of people playing it. All right. But it is the game that they wanted to be able to deliver. But it's taken them 12 to 13 years to get there, gang. I hope you guys are paying attention to these numbers, because when we talk about Star Citizen and we start talking about we're 12 to 13 years in, we say, oh, it should have been done by now. But look at what happened when the game was given the time that it needed to be able to be produced and to come out. And I think that it is an excellent game. And I commend Sean Murray's team that they stuck to their guns, because like a lot of folks, y'all know what usually happens. Game flops, it gets dropped. What was the game you mentioned earlier, the day after?
Yeah, the day before.
The day before. The day
Too
before,
many-
the day
too
before,
many
and the
days.
day after.
Yeah.
So the fact that they've stuck to their guns and produced a game that is really, really enjoyable by many people come back to the game. They've got new players playing that game. But again, this was supposed to be another Star Citizen, and it doesn't have to be a killer. To fastcart's point, you can have all these games, all boats. A great tide can rise all boats, and there's no reason why we can't have multiple games going on. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that one.
Yeah, no, we're really thankful that I think part of it was that Hello Games was a really small shop that was located not in London, not in a major city, but in Guildford, right, which is an hour southwest of London. It's a small, historic, picturesque town, and I think it allowed the development team for Hello Games, as the hype built and as it crashed, to just stay grounded.
Yeah.
Right. And Sean was able to go back to fastcart's point, being on Letterman with the Sony marketing money, running around making all these statements about what he wanted to do, as if they were going to give him the resources right then to do it. They gave him the marketing money to market it.
Right.
And resources came after. But they were able to go back to Guildford and be in that small town setting and just get to work. Just get to work. Right. Yep. And it says in the chat, he was quiet for almost a full year.
That's right. That's right.
And then they just started dropping updates and have not stopped. And I highly recommend, for those of you who have played Elite Dangerous, I highly recommend checking out Elite Dangerous. For those of you who have played No Man's Sky, I highly recommend checking out today's No Man's Sky, because those experiences are really, they're very different than Star Citizen. But they are
real quick, especially if you can find No Man's Sky on sale.
Yeah. Listen, all of them go on sale, right? So yeah, wait for that. Just like I say, wait for a free fly for Star Citizen if you have questions, right? But these are, if we stop as gamers, if we stop the elevation of the critical voice and just look around at what we have, it's kind of a golden era, a second golden era of quality space game experiences that have relatively matured to play, So but they are not Star Citizen killers. They do not do what Star Citizen is trying to do.
Yeah.
Oh, I very much agree. And to our next Star Citizen killer, you're going to talk about Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. You want the audio for this, or you want to?
You can turn it on if you want to. That's fine.
I'm gonna put it on mute because we're running a long time, so I got to.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so this is the game I talked about.
Did you guys
earlier,
play this?
No.
Did you guys play this?
No.
Okay, so I played this.
Okay.
I played this.
Go ahead.
I heard about it. Go ahead, tell them.
Well, Call of Duty players hated it, right? Call of Duty players were like,
Right.
Why?
I'm not interested because it went into space, right?
Yep.
And they weren't interested in space. They weren't interested in space guns and EVA and all that. But for me, the single player campaign of Call of Duty Infinite Warfare was a return to single player campaign greatness
Right.
for the Call of Duty franchise for me. For me, I really enjoyed. I mean, there were a lot of bugs. There were some game crashing bugs on this joint. To this day, there are some game crashing bugs. But I really enjoyed Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. It was a nice, for me, moment of some Call of Duty principles, but like in a space setting that were really fun for me.
Right.
I have tried to go back to it. It's not what it was, right? It's hard to go back to.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But in no way was this a Star Citizen killer. It didn't even want to be in space. The players didn't want it in space. They never gone back to space.
That was my point. That was my point about it. It was supposed to, there were many people when they first saw this. Now, mind you, I don't think they were the Call of Duty players that were saying this. It was people who wanted a space game, and they saw that Call of Duty was going to space, and they got excited about it. And they said, oh, this is going to be, if Call of Duty is a successful franchise, they're going to now take Call of Duty into space. This is going to be amazing. Then when it came out, the COD players didn't dig it at all. And my understanding was that it was a decent game, but it got pushed away from by the actual players of Call of Duty, which was surprising to me. So, again, I don't think it was Call of Duty players that were saying it was going to be a Star Citizen killer. I think it was the people who were looking for something else in space, because we'd already had No Man's Sky and we'd already had Elite. And we got, the Call of Duty people are stepping into this world. It's got to be the bomb. And unfortunately, it bombed. It didn't do as well as it should have done. In fact, it's one of the least favored games within the COD family of games.
Yeah, all I gotta say is that I saw the trailer and I was like, whoa, this looks very familiar. Very familiar. I'm not gonna use the C word over here, but dang, it looked pretty good. But if it was more space based and flight based, I might be interested in this. But knowing it's Call of Duty, I knew it was gonna be FPS based, so it didn't really take on my fancy. But I was like,
it absolutely
whoa,
is that.
Well, I might have to
Souls,
check it out.
thank you for the subscription.
I might have to.
30 months.
If CaptainSeriousFun played it, I might have to get into it now since he said that, because I was a big early Call of Duty player and definitely was way more into warfare. But I didn't mess with this one because I heard so many weird things about it. But now that you've told me that, you may have piqued my interest to try it out. So that's cool.
It's some of the best storytelling that they have done, and I was I don't know if you
like
remember
the single player stuff with them, so that's fine with me.
How long is the game? Like how many hours?
Probably 10 to 20, if
10
that.
to 20, okay.
Yeah, but it's more like.
Style said the same thing. He said the story was great.
Yeah, the story was great.
Oh my God, Stunner!
MT Stunner, thank you for the
much.
5
MT
Appreciate
Stunner.
Thank you.
Welcome and thank you.
So we have a few more. Well, one more. But
Well, at least one more.
Yeah, at least one more. So yeah, this is going to go on mute, but we're going to talk about who has played this Starfield. Who has played Starfield between both of y'all? So only Cap. So okay, Cap, you want to go first?
No. I've started playing Starfield. I started playing Starfield.
I didn't see your hand go up.
I hadn't got a chance to get my hand up yet, but yeah, okay.
All right. Well, Cap, anyway, go ahead, please.
So, Fastcart, have you played it?
No, I have not.
Okay. For the folks that found Oblivion and Skyrim compelling, right? like myself, and for the folks that found Fallout compelling, Fallout New Vegas. I never really played the Fallout series, but for folks who felt that, I
my
think
God.
people.
Mad
Thank you,
style.
Matt. Down for 20.
Wow.
Dang, 20.
Thank you very
Mad
much.
Style. Jeez, thank you so much for that.
Super appreciative.
Mhm.
I think people came to Starfield saying, I am going to have the Bethesda experience, but in 2024, with the 2024 take on it and a 2024 engine of it, and it's going to be in space, which means that the type of walkabout, go off in a random direction and have this really compelling experience. This, I don't have to follow the main storyline. I can just move about, and it's going to be compelling. And it's going to be amplified across space with planets and everything else. When the game actually dropped, and so in the run-up, the hype was at 11 out of 10. Right? I was experiencing the hype as 11 out of 10. Everybody was like, listen, if this drops and it's great, I was even saying, if this drops and it's great, it makes the wait for Star Citizen easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because I've got a compelling Bethesda-based, outstanding experience. My son and I played Skyrim, and he has 200 mods on it. I mean, it goes on and on for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're not sweating it because you got this other really compelling experience. Other people were saying, if Starfield is great, Star Citizen is done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what people were saying on the negative side, was like, if this is really good, then why play Star Citizen at all? Right?
Yeah.
And then it dropped.
Literally.
And the rest is history.
Well, I shouldn't say that. Starfield, the funny thing about Starfield is that there were a lot of expectations. I think you kind of said a lot of them, Cap. There were assumptions, first of all, and I'm going to say this, partially to blame to players who played the game, but also a little bit on Bethesda too. The marketing language that was used, when you start saying next generation, this, that, and the other, certain phrases and everything, from a company that has been, if you look at their gaming history, you mentioned going back from Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout 76. Fallout 76 had a huge failure with its launch, but they had been working on it the last few years and building it up, and it was starting to regain some momentum. But then, when Todd Howard comes out and said this has been 25 years in the making,
right?
That puts some subconscious stuff in your head, right? They've been thinking about this for 25 freaking years, and then they go and tell you, yeah, and we started the development process on this 10 years ago, and then they say we started hitting the boards on this 7 years ago. There's a certain buildup. People say they're probably going to do a new engine, and they're going to do this thing. They'll probably learn some things from Fallout 76 not to do, blah, 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 blah. So there was a lot of both things that the community built up about this, as well as the way their marketing was done for the game. The unfortunate side to it is that, in all honesty, it's a good game. It is a good game. But the hype, to your point, Cap, the hype and expectations were pushed so high, so high that when it came out, people were looking for the quote unquote game-changing game. This is going to change the way games are played. And when it came out, and it just kind of came, this is the way games have been played, just a little differently.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a game.
I mean, look at this trailer that we're looking at right now. This is almost photorealistic. Those are not the graphics in Starfield.
Not at all.
That's not the graphics in
Nope.
Starfield. So you can't put out a photorealistic trailer like that and then get the game when it comes out. And there are elements there that some of this is in the game, but some of that was not there. And so there were people.
When it came to the marketing, to your point, Griff, it was a moment where members of the community, there was voices in the community, the Star Citizen community, that were beginning to tell all of us, stop your ambition for 100 systems. Stop dreaming about 100 systems. We're in one system. Be satisfied with 5 systems. Be satisfied with 10 systems over 10 years. You're never going to get 100 systems. And then Todd Howard had that long form presentation where he's like, 100 systems,
Yeah,
1,000 planets.
worlds. Mm-hmm.
And I went, okay, because 100 systems is what I want for Star Citizen, right? And so I think they did that on purpose. I think they knew that the leading edge, dreaming edge of space gaming is Star Citizen, and Star Citizen was talking about 100 systems. And I think they threw that out there to be like, we got it done.
Then we're going to deliver it, huh? Wow.
And we're going to deliver it, and you're going to see it on this date. 100 systems, 1,000 planets.
Here's the irony. You know, one of the several complaints that I heard from people who reviewed after they played the game and been in the game, the statement they've said is that they should have never done 100 systems. They should have done fewer systems and made the game much more compressed and created worlds that were much more reachable than having this quote unquote real space with only 10%. That's the stuff that they're saying now.
And
but beforehand, that was going to be the benefit that they had all these worlds.
So with all that marketing,
wait.
Go ahead, fast.
Two different point. Like there's this one content creator who flew 7 hours to Pluto only to get there, and Pluto wasn't really there. They flew right through it. So so you can have your 100 planet, but what are you going to do once you get there? So yeah,
and that's a facet of Elite Dangerous as well, is that you can fly somewhere, but if you don't jump into the instance, you don't get there, right?
Yeah.
With all the marketing that Starfield did, they never told you the thing that was most important, which was you're going to be able to press buttons and fast travel, and that's going to be the real mode of getting around.
Yeah, there was assumptions. There were assumptions, absolutely.
Well, and there were lies of omission, right?
Yeah.
Like Todd never told a lie of commission. He never lied directly.
True.
But he certainly left out things you would want to know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. See that planet out there? You can go there. Yeah. Then you get there and you fly right through it. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just saying he wasn't lying. But that's a marketing thing. And again, listen, I gave them benefit of the doubt when they announced before the game came out that it was going to be 10% of the universe would be populated. I was like, okay, I get it, because for a franchise, they're going to leave some space open so they can do DLCs and they can build out as they go. But the reality is that the players wanted more than that it wasn't enough for them, and they weren't looking at it from a DLC standpoint. They're looking at it from, this is what we got right now, and there's a out here. And even when we do go to the worlds that have something on them, there's still nothing there,
Right.
So,
well, that's the other point, is like when you say there's 10% of inhabited worlds, well, what's the compelling exploration mechanic for the other 90%?
Yeah.
Right. Is it mining? Is it base building? Is it tectonics?
Yeah.
Is it emergent life? Is it aliens? What is it?
And in a single player space, 1,000 worlds, when you're the only person out there, is different from an MMO world. The randomness of, I mean, don't get me wrong, NPCs are okay. You know what I'm saying? But as a single player game, do I need 1,000 worlds? Single player?
Well, you better have a real dynamic procedural generation of activities. And some people say, did Skyrim have to be as big as it was? Well, everywhere you went, there was something to do. Yeah. Right. And Captain Jones says in the chat, having at least a co-op options in Starfield would have helped. I think that's exactly correct.
Big time. Absolutely.
Exactly correct.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to try to get us to move on, but I just
I'm sorry. We were way over.
Yeah, I did not really get in hype for Starfield because I tried Oblivion. I could not get into Oblivion. And Griffin like to say, if you like the game, you will like Starfield. And I did. I'm one of the people who didn't really get into Bethesda games, so that's why I gave it a pass, and I'm glad I did. But I will say, if they keep on working on it, I don't know their plans, but if they keep on working on it, I can see this becoming another No Man's Sky story, or
I don't think so.
A Cyberpunk. You don't think so?
I don't think so. I think the problem is the engine.
The engine's an issue for them. They can keep the franchise going, but whether it's, I don't know how far they can take it.
They better license some Unreal 5 and get to working. Because the Creation Engine 2 looked like Creation Engine 0. Them eyes, that look. I was like, you're going backwards, not forwards.
Yeah.
All right.
So, can I say something real quick, Fastcart? Let's skip that last category that we had?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
But I want to supplement this one for a second. Because you just mentioned about Cyberpunk. And believe it or not, you guys, there were some people saying the same thing about Cyberpunk, that it would kill Star Citizen. Now, I don't know necessarily, those are two different worlds, but there are some videos out there that have like Cyberpunk versus Star Citizen. I don't know why people decided to take those two genres and take a cyberpunk genre and a space genre other than the futuristic side of things. But there were people who felt the same way. But the reason why I want to focus on Cyberpunk is, once again, a great, great game. Rocky launch, though. Why was it a rocky launch? Because it was pushed out too soon.
Because you had institutional investors who drive the corporate quarterly dividend function who wanted their money.
That's right. There you go. And that is an issue. I know it seems weird that we're parking on this, guys, but Cyberpunk started again 2011. It took them another freaking 12 years to get the game where it is still not everything that they said, but it is in a good place. It's a very, very good game. But look at how much time it took to get this single player game out the door in a playable way. So I'm only saying this because we're trying to compare some things so that people can get off this horse about how long it's taken for Squadron 42 to come out. Yes, it's taken a long time, but we could say that same thing about every one of the games that we just talked about, that eventually when they were given the time that they needed, they produced a really, really good game, and a game that will probably be around for a good amount of time.
Hey, Gamer, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. I was going to say some other potential Star Citizen killers were, you mentioned Cyberpunk. Anthem, that was going to be another Star Citizen killer.
Yeah.
Mass Effect Andromeda, another Star Citizen killer. And we'll point out, like, most of these, if not all of these, are single-player games, right? So I don't know how people like comparing apples and oranges and saying that any one of them is going to kill Star Citizen. The only thing that can kill Star Citizen, in my opinion, is Star Citizen. So, yeah.
Hey, Star Watcher, thank you for the...
Well, that was actually Shimpasta's gifting to Jade Star Watcher.
Thank you.
So yes, this is okay. So the Star Citizen door. I think we can cover this pretty quickly.
Oh, sorry, Jade. Yeah, really quick. Jade also mentioned Dual Universe.
Oh, Dual Universe, which was also supported by Chris Roberts. Which was literally supported by Chris Roberts.
And I was a very, very early backer of that as well.
I was too. They got my money.
And I've been in there twice. So.
Star Atlas, that's a whole different thing. But go ahead.
Oh, God,
about the door now.
Okay.
So yeah, Star Citizen back at. Oh, sorry, I got the wrong link. But the $20,000 door inside Cloud Imperium studio. This is a door. People are saying, why are you putting so much of our back money into the door? This door is going to cost so much. It's going to cost so much. Why didn't you put it into development? And yeah, it didn't really cost that much. What was the full story, Griff? Or either of you?
Yeah, I mean, the basics behind this was the RSI doors. These doors were installed. They are a ID coded door that you can go through. And obviously for companies like this, they need to have some form of security for people to be able to go in and out. It keeps track of who goes in and out. This is in their LA office. But there were some people who, when they saw this thing, just went crazy, right? And started doing all this investigating, saying, well, how come these paying this money in these doors and how much it costs? So they literally went on websites and tried to find out how much doors, like if you go to a grocery store, to like a Home Depot, how much the doors cost to do that. And people were projecting all types of numbers, saying that these doors probably ran anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 for them to install. The irony of that is that there was a CIG, which fastcart's posting right now, an employee who did respond to this. And they said, normally we don't respond to this type of stuff about financial decisions that we make. But just so you'll know, we did do this in the most economical way possible, that the doors had been created or crafted by some people in-house, and that they basically, I think they said they used like a garage door opener or something. There was something that they used, but basically they found an economical way to create these doors. Again, earlier in the show, we talked about accountability, and making sure that, money is going where it should go. This issue also came up in relation to the new studio in Manchester. There is another post that we were going to talk about tonight, but because we're running over, we're not going to do it. But some of you know, about 5 months ago, there was a post that went out on Reddit by an employee who formerly worked at CIG, who basically said they had some questions about how money was being spent, particularly on the new headquarters. But there have also been people who've talked about the fact that when you're in this business and industry, that there's a certain level of investment that goes into the physicality of the office space that they work in. There have been people who've raised this issue before about their coffee machine that they had to buy, or paintings or seats, furniture, things of that nature. In that industry, if you look at any of these studios, go back and look at Bethesda's video for their opening for Starfield, you will see a very elaborate studio. And that's done for several reasons. One, because of investors. Two, because of the employees. Three, there's a certain level of professionalism that's expected. They're not working out of a garage like they used to be back in the day. This isn't back when they were in Austin working with drywall. And if you go back and watch their earlier videos, they were literally get their monitors and TVs from secondhand places and buy them. They weren't even buying them. But there is a certain level of what's expected for these companies. And CIG is at that place now, guys. As much as we want to kind of feel like there's still that grassroots company that started out back in the days with Ben Lesnick and Sandy sitting around the table laughing and joking, they are a triple A, if not to Captain Serious Fun's point, a quadruple A company. And there's a certain level of expectation that when you walk into this Manchester studio, this elaborate building, if you haven't seen it, it's in a tech development area. It's not just their building. They are surrounded by motion picture companies and other gaming and tech companies. So yeah, that level and bar of presentation is going to be at a different space right now. And hopefully the management of that, monies and funds that do that, is a reality, but let's call it for what it is. It's a reality, and it's something that comes with being in that industry. And I think it's unfair to think that they need to be sitting on what's the company called that you buy your furniture from that you got to put it together?
IKEA.
IKEA. Yeah, IKEA.
Let me
have IKEA furniture in this place.
Yeah, let me make it clear. Let me make it very clear from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
For each one of the over 1,100 employees at CIG,
mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if people have ever seen what it takes to sit down and code and get in the zone in coding. I want them to have chairs with massage. I want them to have organic fruits and vegetables. I want them to have really good water and coffee. I want them to have, monitors and eye fatigue protection.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to have massages that acupuncture. I want them to have everything that they need to have. I want them to have open concept. Mm-hmm. I want the space to give them wellness and well-being.
Right.
I want all the stuff. First of all, I would want that for me.
Mm-hmm.
I would want that for you.
Mm-hmm.
I would want that for everybody involved who has to go to work. If you work or starved and you're working class, and we all need to function as a class and recognize that we can have nice things. We don't have to. We don't have to live in some sort of Calvinist suffrage, right? We can have nice things, right?
Yeah.
I want them to have everything that they should have in order to recruit, to retain great talent.
Yeah.
Right. Fastcart does not have his Vanny Merchantman, and it might be because somebody else got a massage chair, right? And the team bounced, right? So we need to make sure that folks are getting what they're supposed to get. And Jade referenced it earlier. If you go to some of these other tech companies, or you go to Google and some of these other places, they've got organic food out all the time. They got gourmet chefs that will make you bespoke custom meals.
That's right.
This is not out of the garage Wozniak and Steve Jobs in 1979, right? This is and you got to compete for talent.
Yeah.
So I want them to have everything they're supposed to have to give me my 100 systems. Just let them get stuff and stop being haters. Yeah. Right. You about to put half the community on the player haters, because we got a bunch of haters trying to keep people worried about these doors. Don't worry about them doors. You make sure people get what they're supposed to get.
Let me throw something at you. For the $10,000 what's the coffee called? Espresso and all this other stuff, right? The coffee machines, right? If you go in and buy 2 cups of coffee at Starbucks every day for work here, you can spend up to almost $2,400, one person buying their coffee. You know what I'm saying? And so now, to your point, when you work in these spaces, sometimes the salary isn't there, right? But the benefits of being someplace compensate for that, right?
Right.
So that's the other side of the coin. The fact that I can save myself $2,400 a year in coffee because there's a coffee machine here that can give me the exact same thing that I would normally have to go down the street to Starbucks and pick up. You multiply that times all the employees who are working in that space. That $10,000 coffee machine is nothing at that point, right? And to your point, I went to the Austin studios. Fastcart's been to the LA studios. When I went to the Austin studio, it wasn't anything over the top, but it was nice. They had a balcony area where they could go out and sit and relax. One of the biggest things that people who work in this industry talk about are the hours and the stress that they have to deal with, right? So to create a space that, as you mentioned, is archaic, the dark, dim rooms and things like that, these are not healthy spaces for people to work in this particular field. And I'm not saying you got to be freaking, it's overly elaborate, but it does need to be able to compensate for these people emotionally, mentally, and physically, for them to be able to work in a high tension area.
Real quick, I think LA is the smaller studio in Cloud Imperium Games. I don't know about Montreal, but I believe LA is one of the smaller studios that way. It's definitely smaller than Austin. So yeah. So having it there, I don't see what I didn't see what the big fuss was, but yeah, there was a mess that this door cost $20,000 to put in, and yeah, that's not true.
Okay.
All right. So I guess that's it.
Over.
Yeah, we are
over big time.
All right, so let's wrap up this show. Okay, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you, Griffin. Thank you, CaptainSeriousFun. I think we only made a mistake one time tonight, so I'm proud of us. So thank y'all for being here. CaptainSeriousFun, where can people find you?
Oh, so you can find me at CaptainSeriousFun everywhere. My focus is on Twitch. I stream space, sport, sword, and cyber, but mainly Star Citizen, and Griff introduced me to Chivalry, so I've been dying over there. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. If I'm not there, I'm on YouTube delivering long-form videos that'll go first to Patreon and then to there. And we're starting an org called A Pretty Cool Org, so check that all out. But only after you have liked, followed, and subscribed to everything Soul Citizens. Make sure you get that done, right? And then you can check me out. But thank you for letting me say that, Fastcart. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for being here. I don't want to say as always, but as usual, put it that way. And Commander HD, well, that's a lot of numbers. Commander HD. Yeah, thank you for the follow. I'm trying to
and
get
Hayes Gamer 420. Yeah, Hayes Gamer 420. Thank you also for the follow. Zentray, and Zentray. I didn't see him either. Zentray, thank you also for the follow. Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna cover. Okay. Well, yeah. I'm gonna cover Thursday. So Thursday we have our show, Soul Talk. That's where the community comes in and talk to what's going on in Star Citizen that week. We come on Discord and talk to us, and it's a more of a roundtable discussion. We cover ISC that's coming back, and SCO that's coming back also, and cinema and stuff like that. So it's always a fun time, and so check us out for that. CaptainSeriousFun, want to cover Soul Voices, please?
Yes, the long-awaited return of Soul Voices, popping off on Saturdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, as part of Podcast Saturday, or PodSat, Podcast Saturday, where Griffin will take the discourses that are happening across the community and turn them into questions that you can join him on the Discord to discuss. And so there's a lot of fun exploration of the issues, illumination of the conversations that are happening on Reddit and Spectrum and other places. And then after you listen to Griff and Soul Voices, Podcast Saturday means you then head over to Paul Shelley of the Astro Pub, which kicks off and usually does Captain's Table at some point in that evening. And then, as Griff and Fastcard both have shared with me, the OGs of this thing in terms of streaming about Star Citizen Relay happen at 9 p.m. So check all that out across the day. You can do your dishes, you can go to your kid's soccer game, put one earbud in to listen to that, and one earbud in to pay, and one earbud out to pay attention to what you're doing. So that's Saturdays.
Thank you for that. Then on next Sunday, we're covering dynamic events. Nine Tails, Xenothreat, Seas of Origin, and beyond. So that'll be 8 p.m. Sunday, February 2nd, 8 p.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. UTC. That's And I think that's it. Yeah, so thanks for everybody for joining us. Griffin, I hope you had someone that we can raid.
Oh, yeah, I'm sitting here sleeping.
No, you
Sorry.
don't. Okay. So, well, if you want to support us, you can buy our merchandise. You can support us on Patreon. Click the link down below. Make sure you follow and subscribe and join, depending on what platform you're on. And also turn on notifications so you know when we go live. You'll appreciate that. Griffin is still looking, so yeah.
No, I've got something. We're gonna go with Maiden.
Okay. All right, so make sure you send Maiden Ariana our love. So thank you for that. Everybody, peace, love, and soul.